Welcome, everybody, to Mudflood was Armageddon, formerly Flat Earth Nation. It is a Flat Earth Nation. Mudflood was Armageddon. I finally get to tell you that again. It's been a long week. I was so glad to be able to keep up with, some of your work as content providers and some of you who have a ministry of encouraging people in the chat room. Also, it was fun to be on with Web Denubi the other night. Uh, it was fun to get your comments and everything when he was going over those videos. I might be doing the same thing with some John Levy and some other Static in the Attic. I almost titled this video tonight, did John Levy embarrass Static in the Attic off of YouTube? Because it seems like, remember Static in the Attic, his last videos that I remember were the ones about, man, I don't think that those star forts were that hard to build. We can get these 5 people made 10,000 bricks in 2 weeks. And boy, did I was rough on Static. And John Levy just kept pouring it on to the point of like, no, these buildings could not have been done like that. I also with Web Denubi that just 2 nights ago, it was a lot of good information from Golden Age past. I think we'll be taking a look at him. Maybe some UAP and conspiracy are us. I just want to go over later, the people that have accepted Mudflood was Armageddon, the added 1,000 years and things like that, because that's what's really going to matter. And I think you'll know better what I mean in about 15 minutes. I just want to say hi to Victoria, Luther, Fractal Dust Bear, we did Fractal, Nicole. I know that other good friends will be dropping in. I appreciate everybody so much, and honest to goodness. Well, let me get into a share screen situation here, and we'll just start with a Bible verse. Let's look at Matthew chapter 7. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons and perform many miracles? Well, the word many is used twice in this. So I think we should, see how many people are going to be going, turned away from the Lord. So it's pretty close. Like we might want to think of this poloi and pelos as like maybe plurals, but they are both the same number, 4381. But let's just look at this word and see, out of the 361 times it's used, 84 that how many people will be turned away after prophesying, doing miracles in Jesus' name. Large crowds of people followed Jesus, great multitudes, they called it in Matthew 4. And in Matthew 7:13, and many who enter, this is that verse that we're talking about, that many, those great multitudes, large crowds. It seems like many. Let's look at Matthew 22:14, and we'll get the idea of that. Matthew 22:14. For many are called, but few are chosen. Remember, for a very good reason from our God who wrote the end from the beginning, many are called, but few are chosen. And this is a Bible study for, I'm looking for like-minded people that if God did it, there was a perfect reason for it, a beyond good reason for it. And I know that many are called, but few are chosen. So perhaps we should look at that verse and see how few, just working on a spontaneousness, trying to be, allowing yourself to be led by the Lord as you privately work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. Out of 42, there's 8 occurrences of it. And there be few that find it. Oh no, the laborers are few. Many are called, but few are chosen. Many are called, but few are chosen. The laborers are few. Luke 13:23. They said unto him, Lord, are there a few who are being saved? Not a few men. That Acts 17:12, the Apostle Paul was getting ready to speak to the Stoics and the other philosophers of Athens at the time at the Acropolis. And there was not a few people who said, I'll listen to this man again. And there were in 1 Peter 3:10, wherein a few, that is 8. That's how many people were on Noah's Ark compared to the whole world. So narrow, the narrow road. Did you guys get to, hopefully I was sharing those things like that. Welcome, Scotty. How are you doing? The Do Not Resuscitate channel has decided to drop in tonight and try to win the coolest name for your channel. I always made a joke that, when I kind of at the end, after 30 years of marriage, I realized, well, my wife's not coming with me. She wants to stay in Babylon and keep making 200 grand a year and think that we have it made. Well, we didn't have it made. We paid off the house. We were supposed to leave. And I could tell she was kind of turning, like Laban, like Jacob said, her countenance had changed against me. And I was telling her, I was saying, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get tattooed on my chest. Do resuscitate. Don't listen to her. Oh, just a little lighthearted humor here for us at the end of the world. Welcome, John. Glad to see you guys. Everybody else, Scotty, the people that are joining us now. Thank you so much. I still see we have half the people lurking in there. You should get to know these people. They're what the Bible calls the salt of the earth, people looking for that narrow road. So we were studying the Bible, and here's that Lord of Lords. Now, I should back this up. See where I'm studying this from here. I was looking up, the Lord, and curio. We all looking into a mirror, transformed from glory to glory, even as the Lord of the Spirit. Oh, so I was looking up 2 Corinthians 3:8. That must be important because I'm going to be looking up this. Check it out. And we who with unveiled faces all reflect the glory of the Lord are being transformed into his image with intensifying glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. Now, I can tell at the time I left this very controversial verse up just to get somebody's opinion. Amen. That's a good one. Thank you, Scotty. Appreciate it. The Lord has had me waiting a long time, and I just want to be led by the Spirit in this. So let's look at that verse a little stronger here. And welcome, Tammy W. Thank you for feeling comfortable enough to jump in here. So, and we who with unveiled faces, because now we do believe and are being taught that a veil is being lifted even to us who live at the time before Gog and Magog, the very last of the remnant, the very last who can be born again. Maybe that's the rest of the dead, because there isn't going to be a remnant after us. This is the end that is upon us. Another 25 years is about all we got. But stick with this verse. Don't let me distract you. And we who with unveiled faces all reflect the glory of the Lord are being transformed into his image with intensifying glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. Now, that is a better translation than the King James Version that says, are changed into the same image from glory to glory, even by the Spirit of the Lord. Now, you tell me, is this teaching the Trinity? Is this teaching the Trinity? Because when we're having revealed right now is that we know that in the New Testament, we know that a veil was lifted. Now, a lot of people want you to believe that it was the fact that, oh, we didn't know about the Trinity then. And that's what they mean when they said that they had a veil lifted in the new. Well, maybe they knew and taught and we missed it that, well, here's the God they're talking about. And that he says, even as from the Lord, the Spirit. From the Lord, the Spirit. The Lord, our God, is the Spirit. And that's one of the verses that basically my son, he goes like, look, you can go flat earth, you can do this and that, but don't you ever doubt the Trinity, because that's one of the most established things in the world. It's like what? Like it's like the moon. Where's all the real proof from Scripture? And I'm not ready to say that if you believe in the Trinity, you're saved. If you don't, you're saved, or anything else. But what I've always been teaching for the last 4 or 5 years is if you doubt the Trinity, it should not be acceptable for that to be a death penalty to you. Or even for somebody to say, I question your salvation. But yet we're stuck with a history that we'll be going over when we study some of these videos from Golden Age past, John Levy, UAP, and Conspiracy Are Us, who are making it, is that the Roman Catholics want us to believe, and the Protestants believe, that for 400 years there was the bloody Spanish Inquisition and all of these other things, and the Protestants were the ones dying, and and when they ran out of them, it was like, oh, so you believe in the Trinity? We'll kill you and your family now. And people still go like, well, it was different back then. It was a lot different back then, and it's not what they were telling us. So those are just things to talk about in the future, because going forward, thinking that, no, I believe, I learned this, but I'm still locked in on this and that. And unfortunately, as someone who's only ever had one wife, but has seen some good people go through a lot of wives or husbands. I just ask you to make that comparison. Weren't you that sure that your first wife loved you and that would never change? And were you right or were you wrong about that? And some people even went back and tried it again, and then it still didn't work. Because it's time to step back and say, what is the Lord teaching me? And even as we go over some of the videos, I think we're going to start with John Levy. I was just down listening with Tommy before I came up to start this show. And, John started out with, it was going to be about Prague and Czechoslovakia. Look at these great big doors. Look at the great big books there and everything else. And, that he said that's the contradiction of the Bible, is that God killed all those people because they were giants. And that's not what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches that they did not obey God's law, God's perfect law on how you should take care of your business, on what should be worshiped. So he took a people, the least of them, that said, I'm going to raise up a great people out of the most stiff-necked people that there could be, all based on it was coming from a covenant that he made with Abraham. Abraham is what the Bible calls a covenant keeper. Same with Isaac and Jacob. David was a covenant keeper. Now, were covenants important to the Bible? They are very important. And did Israel keep their covenants and then come back to the Lord, double down, and then break their covenants? And eventually, when people read the Bible correctly, it's not read as like, boy, the people that claim to be living in Israel right now who are Jews were the greatest people ever, and God loved them so much that he preserved them. They were judged because they were that wicked and despised generation that rejected Christ and then said, let their blood be on us and our children, because their children were that ones that were born while the book of Acts was being written. And that's usually in the book of Revelation referred to as the synagogue of Satan. And it said that Jesus had John the Baptist sent first, warning them that the root is laid to the axe. The axe is laid to the root, because you can't lay a root to the axe unless you're taking one of those warm-up practice shots or something like that. So, there's that going on. And in the meantime, what are we going through right now? Well, this one's talking about a CIA triad is the basis of information security. Well, we'll look at that later, because what I want to tell you is that a part of their MK Ultra deal is your cyber attack, your cyber strikes, your cyber weapons, that they can hack everything, and they are working on hacking your brain. They really are. It's much more past spyware right now, because user behavior analytics, that's a real thing. We don't even have time to get into it. But look at these things that we don't have time to get into, all of them. This synth attack. This has been happening. And you know what country? Guess what country has never admitted that it has made a cyber attack? United States. Oh no, we only do cyber defense. We're only watching out for those bad guys. We've never done anything. Come on. Everything that claims to be encryption was invented by the CIA, sold through Europe as, here's your encryption. We got it all, man. This world, you'll find out as I can go forward or as the Lord will show you, has been reset. And it's never been anything but mafia world since the reset. It might as well be like that Star Trek episode of where they act like, well, we had a book and it was the mob, because there's no real elections that have ever been real. The only reason that they want you to vote is because if you're registered to vote, all your talkity talk about, well, I'm not going to stand for that martial law and that gold fringed flag. Well, if you're registered to vote, yes, you are. You've placed yourself under them. And so we can, we do a lot of yapping here on the right and in the truther movement and everything else. But when it comes right down to it, when people's eyes are opened like they were, and we'll see how long ago it was, because I'm not sure if it was first John Levy, but when John Levy, Conspiracy Are Us, and UAP, all within a month, jumped on the bandwagon. It was right after Tommy had been co-hosting for about 2 months. We were doing the Stones. We were going over Genesis and finding, first, creation in Genesis 2:5, and there was no man to till the ground in Genesis 2:5. And then we have somebody made in the image, and then another one made from the dust, and then the one from the dust had his life blown into him. So there was a lot of things going. And then all of a sudden, well, everybody got interrupted, masked up, and secluded. But it didn't end then. Here we are. Everybody got separated. I'm out. I'm, going through now my 4th channel of trying to start over. And do I wish I still had 9,700 subscribers? Of course I do. I want the word to go out as much as possible. Am I equally convinced that the Lord Jesus Christ turns the king's heart like a river, whithersoever he wills, and so that this must be part of God's will? What do people who, if I started a church, I like to say, I'd like to call it the Reformed, Hutterite, Mennonite, Presbyterian, narrow road church. What does a Christian like that say after they've fallen down the steps? I'm glad that's over, because this is our Father's world. We're saved because we're in the Bible. It teaches we're like those people that were by the highways and the byways, and the next thing you know, we're compelled into somebody, and we better have that linen on that they give us to go to this feast at. But we've been compelled there. He was looking for us. We weren't looking for him. We were dead in our sins, and he made us alive so that we cannot boast any other way then God saved you, to where if you think that it's synchronistic instead of mononistic, and that God chose you instead of somehow, oh no, I agreed with God that he's okay, so I took him. Well, aren't you a good guy? That's a reason to boast. You're smarter than those other people. No, we are all just caught up in this. And so that's why, along with the cyber attacks and everything else that basically they couldn't do before the 1980s, there's that information technology again. I think we're going to look at that. In the first 6 months of 2017, 2 billion data records were stolen or impacted by cyber attacks, and ransomware payments reached 2 billion. Well, we know that they just shut down the power grid a couple of months ago. We forget about that. And this is just going to keep going. It's going to keep going. There's that CIA triad, information security and information technology. Somebody get my IT guy. Move. I'll do it for you. Everybody's going to have an incident response and a computer emergency response team. Watch out, we'll take it from here. Wiretapping, fiber tapping, port scans, keystroke logging, data scrapping, backdoor denial of service attack. You've been spoofed. The man in the middle, the man in the browser, ARP poisoning, ping flood. What'd you call me? Oh man, here's that syntactic attacks. Now these are the ones that you better watch out for because they have computer viruses. They have computer worms, Trojan horses. If you don't believe they have Trojan horses, maybe you never heard of Anthony the Wiener, former mayoral candidate of New York. They make salsa there. I've heard they make salsa in New York City. And everybody else is doing all of this attack except the United States. We are on defense. Let's see what it says about the United States. In the West, the United States provides a different tone of voice when cyber warfare is on the tip of everyone's tongue. The United States provides security plans strictly in the response to cyber warfare, basically going on the defensive when they are being attacked by devious cyber methods. Because we are the good guys. If you only believe we are the good guys, we will be the good guys in your mind. I can't keep going on this. I got all this other stuff, but I might want to get back to it. Information security. You know what? Look at all these things, man. Where do you start? Let's start with the picture. People, you're in the outer ring by yourself. Now, in between you, people with personal security, you have procedures and organizational security and the products, physical security to protect you, the people. Because you want access to hardware, communications, and software so that you can get integrity, reliability, and confidentiality as you seek, to write your paper on the weird sex lives of Pompeii or whatever else you got going, right? Oh, yeah, watch out. A poster promoting information security by the Russian Ministry of Defense. Would you if that was printed in English, would you have known that this is a Russian or not a picture of me when I was a nerdy 30-year-old? I wasn't in the Army when I was 30. I got out as quickly as my enlistment was up and said, never look back. There's the Onion. Hey, I don't want to hang out on this too much either. I don't even want to hang out on this stuff, but this is what I've been studying in my kind of spare time. Hey, I'm not gonna beat you up about this stuff, but I do think that I have to bring this up. And this is how they're trying to kill you with that new it could be coming in the chemtrails. You could become, what's that new disease? Type 2 diabetes? Anyway, they're trying to, how they're trying to break these down. It's too much right now, but I can't get into you. But they're not doing it right. When they tried to mess with your bodies and things like that, they're messing with your kidneys, your livers. It's all this food that unless you are like hyper diligent right now, the food that you eat, the air you breathe, the water you drink is killing you on purpose. On purpose, man. They're being bad. So let's go. Uh, if anybody wants to come in and have their say on anything, do it well, do it right, and come on, just don't get me kicked off again, because I want to stay on there. I'm going to be like, this is Labor Day. We could get into that, but I want to be reading the Bible, going over it with commentary. I don't want to lose these videos, like the 3,000 videos that now I can't access because YouTube said I'm a bad medical advisor or something. Let's warm up with this video. Well, let's don't. I want to find that one. I should stick on a topic and not try to. Well, he's done a lot of videos. We're 11 months ago, so I know the one I'm looking for. Be curious to see how long ago it was. I just watched this about this cannon. Look how it's threaded. You got to be kidding me. Now here I thought it'd be easier. I hope he didn't take that one down. I thought I saw it. A lot of good videos here. And it's a shame that but everything is God's timing. Everything is God's timing. Heavenly Father, I'm praying that you'll help the people to stay with me now as we get this going, that let them feel free to come on here, because I am not seeing that one about the millennial reign of Christ. And usually it just pops up. Well, we are going to not delay anymore. We'll look at it because I'll be honest, this is one of the ones that I haven't touched on, because to me, it just seemed like it hadn't been enough that it was electricity. I know there are certain ways to get electricity, but let's look at this new video and let's just look at this. 50,000 views. In this episode, we will examine the architecture of cathedrals. Hey, before we get going in the cathedrals, does anybody know what makes one of those big churches a cathedral? A cathedral has a throne, a chair for a bishop. So that's how you can classify, oh, it's a cathedral. It was made and it has a seat for a bishop. So let's watch this and then get me, give me your opinions on this, what they call the antique attack.
This week I wanted to open up with this image. This is not my hand. I would never let my nails get that long. However, this was found in Utah. And I found the picture while looking for some local things on Facebook in my area, and he had posted this. And as of now, the thing has gone viral. many different languages, and I found it absolutely fascinating, reminding me of one of the specimens we examined in that museum of cryptids. But nevertheless, today's video is about the architecture of cathedrals and churches. The second part, I'll go into the lost history of America in a kind of rant format. I hope you enjoy, and welcome. How can I tell an authentic building from a modern pile of junk? It leaves me with a sense of reverence, and very few things today leave me with such a feeling. Here I'm looking at the architecture of cathedrals and great churches. The earliest large churches date from late antiquity, as Christianity and other construction of churches spread across the world. Their manner of building was dependent upon local materials and local techniques. Different styles of architecture developed and their fashion spread, carried by the establishment of monastic orders, by the posting of bishops from one region to another, and by the traveling of master stonemasons who served as architects. The successive styles of the great church buildings of Europe are known as early Christian, Byzantine, Romanesque, Gothic, Renaissance, Baroque, Rococo, Neoclassical, and various or random revival styles of the late 18th to early 20th centuries. And then, of course, there is modern. Ah, yes, sometimes attributed to a brutalist architectural style, the only one that offers no sense of wonderment and again reverence. Here we see a cathedral in Armenia, believed to be constructed in 300 AD, and often we consider the ability to construct such wonders only 200 years ago, but here, almost 2,000 years ago, and in pristine condition, aside from a little weathering. Here, beginning in the year 1200, we have the Salisbury Cathedral, an early English Gothic architectural style, said to have the tallest spire in England. And again, some want to debate the ability to do these things 200 years ago. And I think we did have the ability to do such things, but I don't think that we did. When this weathering and architectural style is the same, clearly of the same hand of the same builder, it's pretty safe to say.
I'm going to pause this for a second and let it buffer up. It just doesn't look like it's getting clear enough for me, so that I want to get it to, so you can see it as clearly as he's presenting it.
That our recent inheritors are not the builders. These earliest works are the best proof for this case in a past civilization. Of course, St. Basil's Cathedral of Moscow, but here we see the Basilica of Our Lady of the Pillar in Zaragoza, Spain. And this architectural style is said to be Baroque. And as I've said in the past, I'm not impressed with these terms, I believe, given by the inheritors. This style, with its antiquitech, which we now understand as atmospheric energy harvesters, are found on all of these buildings. The higher the spire rises, the more availability of this ether, and oftentimes there is more unusable building above the main structure than there is below it. And I've touched on the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, and this one is a mystery. I have a feeling that Gaudi the artist attributed to this cathedral may have just been a facader, and he was either adding to this unfinished cathedral or partially destroyed, and I believe the latter, but nevertheless a wonder that is still unfinished for I don't know how long. And here these round, rotunda-style churches dating back to the 4th century. Here's one in Bulgaria, and this is just some ruins. And here they've done their best to cover the tops of the ruins, turning this into a little park area, breaking up the windows, and clearly this goes down underground level. And a church, a tomb, a monument, all designations given to small, random structures, and often employing these cross layouts, which I think is another reason to attribute them to churches. And yet this is employed all throughout the old world. This could be said to be one of their stamps or marks. And here we see the Florence Cathedral, said to have the largest dome, and we're told while they were constructing it, they had to figure it out as they went. No dome had ever been built of this magnitude. We're told there was much secrecy with the builder, and again, he'd never built anything like this before, and the narrative is completely ridiculous, and we can even see today it's in ruins. Up here, this portion of the facade is missing, and just absolutely mind-blowing, even to attempt building something like this. If we're to believe the narrative, no such thing had ever been built. He doesn't even know how he's going to do it, and he's beginning. To believe this story would require blind faith. And here's a look at facadage. Again, a mark of the old world. It doesn't matter how far back our narrative tells us these buildings are, they all incorporate this ornamental detail that is seldom found in anything today. And to me,
all right, we'll be coming back to that one. That seemed really cool. And I want to get as I was looking for it, the thumbnail I was looking for was from Conspiracy Are Us's video about the millennial reign of Christ. So I'm going to look that one up and let's see, we'll check that out. So let's do it that way, because I want to get one in on the millennial reign of Christ to get, your opinions on what other people were saying about it. Let's see. There he is. Now, see, this is the one I was looking for. 1 year ago, they had a whole series. A bunch of people put out videos like this when they first heard about it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back for another episode. Today, we're going to be talking about the millennial reign of Christ and the second resurrection. So, what is the millennial kingdom, and should it be understood literally? Now, in the final book of the Bible, the book of Revelation, as it's called, there's a period of time referred to where Jesus Christ returns, and then after he reigns on earth for 1,000 years. And it's referred to as the millennium. And during that time, there's supposed to be peace and unity. And then after that time, before that time, Satan is supposed to be thrown into the pit. After this 1,000 years, Satan is let loose. And here's just a graphic showing some key markers. And why I find this real interesting is because there's an idea that has been put forward. And I first heard about this from a channel called Fenda. And I'll try to leave a link to one of his videos talking about this. But the idea is that this 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth has already happened. And we are actually on the other side of it. Sounds far-fetched, I know, but as we go along, there are some really interesting tie-ins, at least from my perspective. And these are just some markers that when Jesus returns, this is according to what's laid out in the book of Revelation as to what will happen. So when Jesus returns, you're supposed to, of course, Jesus returns, and there's supposed to be this battle of Armageddon, a lot of apocalyptic events, and then Satan is bound for 1,000 years, thrown in a pit. And then you have another interesting thing where they're talking about the first resurrection. And that's going to be interesting when we look into that. And then after the 1,000 years, Satan is let loose to deceive the nations. And then there's another resurrection. And there's this final battle of Gog and Magog. And after that, there's a final judgment. And then time no more. So I want to look into some of these things and just see some of the tie-ins to our present situation. It's kind of interesting. So I wanted to start by looking at the return of the King. Now, the first thing I want to do is I just want to take a look at 3 instances where there's these references to the return of Jesus, when they expected it. And I think you're going to find the people that were talking in the Bible with reference to the second coming, they were expecting it. It seems like they were expecting it imminently, as opposed to at some point in the distant future. Now, this is the first example, and this is just from First Thessalonians, and that's King James Bible. And here's the chapter and verse. But this was written by Paul the Apostle, I believe, and it was written to this church in Thessalonica, which I think is present-day Greece. But if you look at the wording, it appears that they were expecting the return of Jesus in their lifetimes. So it just goes on to say, we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven at the final trumpet, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. So he's saying, he's including him, he's writing to this church in Thessalonica, and he's saying, so he's including himself, we which are alive and remain, we who survive the apocalypse and remain to live to see it, we will see the coming of the Lord when he descends from heaven. So that's pretty clear language to me, but that's not the only instance. Matthew 24, King James Bible. Jesus himself, this is when Jesus, he's still alive. The first instance was after Jesus had died. Now this is before his death, and Jesus himself is talking to his disciples on the Mount of Olives, and they're asking him, what will be the signs of your return, and also of the end of the world. And he's telling them there will be many false Christs, antichrists, false prophets. The sun will be darkened. And then
All right,
people see the Son of Man coming in.
let me do that same thing. I just checked it on my phone, and I want to make, well, he's got that. I want it to be a little bit clearer here. So let that buffer. And, you know, I'm going to like this video. Wonder what video he linked it to. Doesn't matter.
In the clouds. But then he goes on to say, verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass until all these things are fulfilled. So again, Jesus himself, talking to his own disciples while he's still alive, is telling them their generation shall not pass until all these things happen, including him returning in the clouds. And I think, again, this is when the Apostle Paul talking to this church saying, we who are alive will see the Lord descending from the clouds, descending from heaven. So again, two different people speaking, same event. And I just one more. This is a different instance. 1 John 2:18. Little children, it is the last time. And as ye have heard that Antichrist shall come, even now there are many Antichrists, whereby we know it is the last time. So again, they're speaking that it is the last time, and he's talking about Antichrists here.
Look at that girl. She's on a lonely, narrow road.
Many Antichrists before the Antichrist. And back here, Jesus was saying at the end, you would see there would arise many false Christs, Antichrists. So 3 just quick examples. There's more I could put in here, but just, to keep things moving. There's indicators, strong indicators that Jesus was expected back during their lifetimes. And obviously we're on the other side of that. So has this 1,000 years happened? Well, here's where things start to get interesting. This leads us to our second topic, and that is the apocalypse, Armageddon. Now, when Jesus returns for his second coming, it's supposed to be a time of untold destruction, tribulation, followed by 1,000-year period of peace. So is there anything in our history that we can look to which is a massive destruction event followed by 1,000-year period of time? I think there is. I think it's just sort of misdescribed to us. So what would that destruction event be? Let's start with that. Well, I think we know it by this name, the fall of the Western Roman Empire. When we think of the fall of the Roman Empire, typically, or the Western Roman Empire, it's described to us as this period of time over roughly 100 years where it starts to fall apart, disintegrate, and it's sort of more of a gradual process. But what if all of this is actually a single event took out the empire that we know of as the Roman Empire? What if that all happened in a very, very condensed period of time when Jesus returned, which is in our past? Because what do we see with the Roman Empire? The ruins all over, pretty much all over where the Roman Empire, what we know as Roman Empire, spread its wings. We see destruction on a massive scale with it. And we have temples, and even, I believe this is an image or photo of Rome itself. So not only are things destroyed, but they're buried, 10, 20 feet sometimes. And it's not only, this is Rome, but you have it overseas as well. Like you have it in Britannia, in Roman occupied Britain. They find like Roman baths and Roman villas. They just like will stump, they'll be digging for something and they'll find a Roman bath. And there's a place called Bath, England. And they found one of these Roman baths in 1878. Now, the problem that they had was that there was already buildings on top of it. So let's see what happened. The buildings were purchased by the city authorities and demolished. So, and the cover stories that were given for a lot of the things that are Roman that we find in Britain, typically the story here is that with regards to these Roman baths is that barbarian raids from Northern Europe and Ireland, at the same time, flooding from this river resulting from poor maintenance meant black mud began to cover everything. So why was it all covered? Like, why was it buried? Because they're saying somehow they know that this mud began to cover everything because of poor maintenance and this river. Okay, I mean, there's no way for us to verify. And then they're telling us the temple buildings collapsed and the roofs of the baths eventually crashed into the growing swamp. So what I would suggest is that this is BS, and this is just a cover story. And what you're seeing with this Roman bath is exactly the same event that happened with this, that happened with this, that happened with this. It's all one event, but we're given different stories depending on the location. And again, this is in Britain. They find Roman villas, and now some of the Roman villas in Britain have survived in such good condition. We have a very clear idea about how the rich lived and what their homes were like. But here's another cover story. When the Romans left Britain, and I don't think they left, everything got destroyed. When the Romans left Britain, it appears that some villas were covered with dirt to trap into them the spirits of the Romans. Sounds likely, right? So just stuff like this. So it's what I'm suggesting here is that all of this happened at once worldwide, and it's just sort of, they've expanded it, made it seem like a gradual fall of the Western Roman Empire. Then they've explained away these villas. People are just intentionally covering it with dirt. Here, they're blaming this river for covering the Roman baths in Bath, England. And they've just got different stories, but it's potentially, I don't know, obviously, but I think it's the same event. Now, so this is the destruction event, right? Now, is there a 1,000-year period? When Jesus returns, there's this massive destruction event, but it's followed by a 1,000-year period. Well, what happens after the fall of the Western Roman Empire? Well, you have a 1,000-year period of time called the Dark Ages. And isn't that just the controller way to do things? Completely potentially invert this 1,000-year reign of Christ by calling it the Dark Ages. And so roughly speaking, the Dark Ages correspond to the Middle Ages. I think most of the history we have here is fake anyway, but I am aware that a lot of the timeline has been manipulated. And a lot of years have probably been added. And I know we switched to the Gregorian calendar, I think in the late 1500s. And you also had this phenomena where for a while prior to like 1800, they were putting an I or a J in front of a date, and that I would represent Jesus or Jesus, or the J would represent Jesus. So the date would be like how much time had passed since the death of Jesus. So what I wanted to point out here is this desk it's referred to as the king's desk, and this desk is in the palace of Versailles, and it was made, we're told, for King Louis I believe this one was made for King Louis the 15th in 1769. Now, the person who made this desk, he put his inscription in there, and his name was Jean-Henri Riesner. And when you look at the date on this, it's a J, 769. So, but when you look at the official history for this desk, it'll say 1769, but this is supposed to be a J. And if you look at this Jean-Henri Riesner, you look at his birth, date of birth and death, it's again 1734 to 1806. So you go back here, so they're taking this to be a 1. So when I look at this period of time, I understand that from our current year 0 to now 2020 years, there's probably a good chunk of that has been added, but it's still, I think they're probably doing that to cover up this 1,000-year period of time, and a good portion of it has probably been chucked into this period of time we know as the Dark Ages. So, and we also have these mile markers. This is for Boston, and just another example. The eye, 734, and here's one eye, here's another eye, here's another eye. So it's after Jesus, after Jesus. Clearly an eye, not a 1, but we would be told this is 1734. So the calendars are heavily manipulated, but so we have the destruction event worldwide potentially, and we have this 1,000-year period potentially. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is something called fervent heat.
Man, I love the way he makes those little sounds when he changes his screen and stuff. It's just so cool.
So if we go back to the Bible, there are some other verses that talk about what's going to happen when Jesus comes back again for the second coming. Just before this 1,000-year reign, there's this interesting verse that talks about, the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night. So when he returns, the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Fervent heat, things melting. Where have we seen that? Well, Turkey, right? I think this is Cappadocia, but everything appears to be melted. Here's a good shot. It's just something has happened to the rock, and people felt the need to hide potentially in these structures. And I believe this is from Turkey as well. And I have got one here this is from Petra. And you could just see this area here. Looks like entrances have been covered up, but something happened, and it's curious. The Bible talks about this fervent heat, which is going to cause some significant damage. The elements shall melt with fervent heat. So that's an interesting tie-in. Now, this is where, for me, as crazy as this is going to sound, and it is, and again, we're not proving anything here, but this, for me, answers so many things you have no idea. So we're going to talk about raised incorruptible.
Cool.
So I guess we have a little timeline here, and at the beginning of this 1,000-year, when Jesus returns, another interesting event is said will take place. It's called the first resurrection. So what is this first resurrection? Well, let's go back to the book of Revelation, King James Bible, chapter 20, verse 6. Blessed and holy is he that hath part, that takes place, that has a part in the first resurrection. They're saying the second death will have no power over them. Okay, but they will be priests of God and of Christ, and they will reign with him 1,000 years. So there will be people who are resurrected. And just to give you some background, these people are the ones who didn't take the mark of the beast, didn't worship at the altar of Baal. And a lot of them were probably martyred for their beliefs. So they're the first ones who get resurrected. And not only that, they're going to reign on earth for 1,000 years. So why is that interesting?
No, where did it say that where did it say that they're going to reign on earth in this verse? Or any of the verses? Where does it say that it says they will reign with him? I split hairs for a reason.
Of Baal, and a lot of them were probably martyred for their beliefs. So they're the first ones who get resurrected. And not only that, they're going to reign on earth for 1,000 years. So why is that interesting? Well, here's one more verse, just verify what I just told you. This is a different, this is the first Thessalonians. This was Revelation, but it's talking about the same thing. When the Lord himself descends from heaven, you have the final trumpet, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. So the same group of people. So why is that interesting? Here's why. A different part of book of the Bible, 1 Corinthians, and you have these two verses. So what this is I can't remember. I think it's the Apostle Paul talking to this. It's a letter to this church in Corinth. And so he's talking to believers, people who believe in Jesus and in the gospel. And he's telling them, behold, I'm going to show you, tell you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. That last trumpet comes up again and again. So when the last trumpet sounds, the dead shall be raised incorruptible. So that first resurrection, and we, these believers, we shall be changed. So when you start looking into this, these people are in the twinkling of an eye. These people get different bodies. They get these glorified bodies. I guess that's the best way I can describe it. They're going to have different bodies, but they're going to be on earth, ruling with Jesus for 1,000 years.
I thought they were going to be raised. Okay, they're dead, are being raised. They're going to be changed, but I'm still looking for where, and I'm not ready to dig in because I understand, I get it. Let me just pause here for 1 second. I completely understand. You guys don't want to go in and say, oh, here's where it is, because look, I get triggered 400 or 500 times and now I'm branded for life. That's a joke. Because I'll probably go crazy. I just want to know one verse where those people, because everybody always says they're going to rule with them on earth. All I want to just show me the verse where it says that.
So some of the people who survive the tribulation as well, who are believers, they get different bodies, and these saints who are raised up first, they get different bodies. So why is that interesting to me? Well, here comes the crazy part, but what do we talk about with waste management? The secretly disgusting history of royal palaces. Again, going back to the Palace of Versailles, toilets were only added in the 1700s. That's no toilets for the masses, servants, or even guests. Any toilets. Now, again, I believe Palace of Versailles has 55 fountains, and here's just some of them. Now, water, again, I think when they initially tried to get water to these fountains, they built aqueducts, reservoirs, and they got water from 4 miles away from the River Seine. Now, these people who did all this, they didn't, what was it? So the palaces had no easy access to water, and therefore they had no indoor plumbing. The same people who did all this had no plumbing. And meanwhile, the Roman, what we call the Roman civilization, they had solutions for waste management. They took it away, and I know some people are saying, well, they made it to make gunpowder, black powder. Well, here, you know what you can do? You can actually do what the Romans did and centrally collect the waste, and you can still do whatever you needed to do to make with waste to make gunpowder. So that's not, for me, I think that's BS. I know that that's some of the stories given to us, and this whole thing that it's in the culture, I don't believe it. I don't buy it. It doesn't make sense. I think that some of these people had different body types, and so they didn't need these what we kind of need as far as waste management. But yeah, you had this major step back from this Roman civilization to when sort of the medieval and even in these palaces. And you know what they had for waste management? Basically, they had chamber pots, and they had like these privies, these centrally located in the palace, where all that it was a toilet seat with a pipe connected to it, and that would empty into a cesspit. That's it. And they wouldn't, like, it would the smell would waft into the palace, and the whole thing with that's part of their culture. It was a problem. It's not like it was something that was any benefit to them. So it doesn't make sense. And even one of the first known toilets that was flushed with water is at the Palace of Knossos on the island of Crete. So they had this thing figured out. But for some reason, we take a step back, and here's, again, this is just like the Romans had like these communal bathrooms even, and you would just sort of, your waste would be washed away. But they knew at least to do this. But for some reason, everything steps back. And what else do you find in the medieval time frame? We have these castles, thousands of these castles. What don't they have? Running water, flowing water, plumbing, none of it. So the most elite castles were the people, the most elite, and some of these palaces, no waste management, no running water. What is going on? Well, I think the answer, as crazy as it sounds, might be people with these glorified bodies. And all they had, the castles for waste management, I think there are these holes. I've got, on the outskirts of the castle, and their waste would flow into the moats around the castle. I think these were added after the fact, but yeah, not great as far as waste management goes. So I just find that fast. I know it's a stretch, but makes so much sense for me. Now, I want to talk about the rest of the dead. So here's where we come in. So Satan is, after the 1,000-year reign, Satan is loosed, and there is a second resurrection. And here's where we come in. I think this is where we come in. Here's a verse. Again, we're in the book of Revelation. But the rest of the dead live not again until the 1,000 years were finished. So there's another resurrection that happens. And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan's going to be loosed, and he's going to go out and deceive the nations. And there's going to be a final battle with a large amount of people, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. So it's food for thought. Like, how would, after this 1,000-year reign with Jesus himself being on earth and these saints, these people with glorified bodies mixed in with people with normal physiologies, how would Satan be able to deceive the nations? I mean, but maybe those, because we don't see these people with these glorified bodies and Jesus, they're not around. So maybe at the end of this 1,000 years, they're somewhere else. And Satan has been, see, it's sort of a gray area. Here we are, and this is just one more verse before I make my point here. This is just another verse talking about there shall be a resurrection of the dead, both of the just and unjust. Now, again, so here we are. We have it starting in like the mid 1850s. We start getting images of cities that have way too many structures, and they seem to be virtually empty. And then all of a sudden, there are found orphans and foundlings and orphans, and it seems like that we didn't build these structures, and it seems like they belong to a different people, but we just sort of showed up. No one really knows where. Most people can't trace their genealogies prior to 1850. I know some can. That might be explained by this previous group. There were some humans living in this millennium. But it's just, I know it's a leap, but you start looking at our current situation, and it does seem like the nations are being deceived. Like behind everything, every sort of everything around us is a lie. So you kind of start looking, are the nations being deceived? Seems like it. Did a bunch of people show up that we can't explain, living in cities that appear to be empty that we don't seem to have built? Kind of seems like that. But, because look, as far as how well we know our history, because, you might wonder, well, how could they hide a 1,000-year reign of Christ? How could they do it? Now, I saw this example of a mudflood structure in another video recently, and it's a really good example. So I kind of want to borrow it and just show you guys. This is, and I have a point here. This is Kingston City Hall in Ontario. And I don't know, I can't remember the date for its construction. I think it might have been 1856, but regardless, that's probably not the real date. But what we're going to do is, in the back here, there's this little courtyard, and there's stairs that go down here. There's some stairs that go down here. So we're going to go over to this vantage point, and we're going to look at an old photo of this. And wait till you see this. Okay, here's, so here.
Okay.
Here is we're at the back of the city hall, and it's kind of hard to tell, but there's stairs that go down here. And so there's one row of windows, 2 rows of windows, and there's this 3rd row of windows here. And there, you have to kind of go down to see the full amount of them. But now there's an old photo of this city hall from, I think it might be late 1890s or early 1900s. But you can only see 1 row, 2 rows of windows. And this whole area that has been, this is the ground level here, but here it's all been dug out. So under here, there's a whole level that you can see now, but turn of the century, it was covered. And this is a great before and after example. But so if we don't even know, they've managed to hide what covered this building in layers of earth. Like, when did it happen? How did it happen? Who cleaned up? We don't even know that. So, when we're going back to, I know some people like to go back in our history. We just have to be careful with everything, including the Bible. But if we don't even know what happened here, and whatever happened probably was in the last, let's be generous, say 300 years, and they've managed, somehow we don't know it. So how sure can we be of anything that happened even before 1850? We can't. If they managed to hide this from us, I mean, how much do we trust our history then? We can be fooled with this. What else could they be hiding from us? Pretty much everything. And, we've seen pictures of this, and I think this was Kansas City. And like, what else are they telling us? You see these cathedrals, and you have these massive doors with smaller doors. And this is a lodge that's in Azerbaijan. And just look at the structure. Like, so when you look into it, it's said that it was designed this way. And it's just a classic mud flood structure. But for some reason, they have these giant doors. And again, it's like a lodge or an inn, and they've got little doors. This is about 6 feet tall, but again, these massive doors with smaller doors. So this isn't even on record as to, it seems like there are people with a larger stature, but it's not on record. So we are history. Anything's on the table because we don't know our history. So I guess I'll leave it here, like I said, but until next time, take care. Bye.
Reserve some for the foundlings.
As it should always be, the foundling of the future. This is the way.
This is the way.
And so we are history. Anything's on the table because we don't know our history. So I guess I'll leave it here, like I said, but until next time, take care. Bye.
Reserve some for the foundlings.
As it should always be, the foundling of the future. This is the way.
This is the way.
There is another way, another truth, and it leads to life. We are that last reset generation. And I want to thank you all for sticking with me. 27 people in there. Tommy from Texas has joined us. Hey, Tommy, how's it doing, brother? Anything you want to add to the conversation? Let me drop in a linkity-doo-dah, fresh one for anybody. So much good stuff. There we go. Thank you so much. Let's go back and we'll check out some of this one on John Levy.
There's a wide range here of the cathedral style. Here they call this the Russian Revival, Gothic, here in Cologne, one of my favorites, and Spanish Baroque in Galicia, Spain. And then there's things like this, the neoclassical or the new classical or the new old can be found in Lithuania. And really this looking like any Washington municipal building or even the World's Fair buildings. And yet they tell us the original cathedral began in 1251. Here we can see it in 1530. Here's a rendering of it in 1847, looking more impressive than it does today, and pretty unbelievable. Again, looking like some more recent architectural style employed in what we're told would be the early 1900s, and yet this baby going back to the 1500s. So really being loose with the narrative. And This next part was an experiment. I wanted to see if I could talk to a group of strangers and explain all of this. In the end, I concluded that I could not. But here it is anyway. I'm a researcher into what would be known as forbidden history or archaeology. This particular area, this is one of the greatest hotspots for Spanish ruins and treasures in the United States and perhaps the world. And most of this is covered up. And yet here today we have excellent examples of what is not commonly taught or understood. And I agree, many of these ruins found everywhere, and not just in this area, but everywhere, ruins. And what I want to propose today is, are these really Spanish ruins? Or are they ruins from a past civilization that may have occupied this very land in which we now sit? I ask you to consider how difficult it was to get to this very spot today from wherever you came. Many hours in a car,
Hey, Tommy.
and that's with paved road.
How you doing, brother?
Oh, fine. Just chilling, watching y'all do this. Answering back to Shucks that subscribe to his channel.
Good deal. I'm going to subscribe to it too,
Right,
if I'm not already.
right. So you're going over some of that Levy stuff, I see.
Yeah. Tommy just got kind of introduced to John Levy. He's been busy a little bit, and now he's been catching up. The thing is that John Levy's voice kind of makes Tommy drowsy.
He kills me, man. He drives me nuts, man. I want to say it for him. You know, just stop doing that, man. Stop. But no, good stuff on there. Good stuff on there. Well, you know, like you said, that's the thing. A lot of the premillennialists keep saying is that they served with Christ on earth, and it doesn't say that in the Bible anywhere. It just doesn't say it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't want to kick them for that.
No, I want to find out the truth too. It's just that, that seems to be kind of a hangover. And I know Joel has the one verse that he likes to show that Jesus will stand on the Mount of Olives, but I don't think I don't think it ends there.
Yeah,
because he's returning. Here's Joel. We can get him to explain it.
What's up, Joe?
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, Joel. We were just mentioning you're the only one that has at least a verse on it and why you believe what you believe. And I don't want to make a big deal out of it. I just think that, that's just the one verse. I'm looking for more than just that he stood on the Mount of Olives, and that means that they ruled with him for 1,000 years and helped him and didn't die on earth where.
Well, no, for me, I try to look at the whole picture of what it means, what actually happens on the day of the Lord. For me, what I see is that he physically returns, physically in this earth, and that it's that whole scripture. I think there's more than one, but with that particular verse, I think it goes on to describe multiple events that occur when his feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives. There's multiple physical events, like, this giant earthquake. That's a physical earthquake. So if it's not his physical feet standing physically on the ground that causes this physical earthquake, that's very possible. I don't have everything figured out, but that's what I see when I look at certain things, that I believe he physically reigned from here and then went back up to the throne room with the glorified saints and the angels after Satan was let loose. Because I know for a fact that Jesus is back on the throne by the time New Jerusalem comes down. So somewhere between Satan being loose and New Jerusalem coming down, Jesus ends up back in heaven.
Right.
And I lost my voice. Obviously, you guys know that, so I am sorry. It's kind of
Jesus is back on the throne by Acts chapter 6 when the first martyr Stephen who was, you know, murdered by the Apostle Paul's gang of roving Pharisees, you know, he looked up to heaven and saw Jesus sitting at the right hand of the Father, and he said, "Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do." Or I think he said, "Don't hold this against them, they don't know what they do." I wanted to welcome Scotty, proudly wearing a Saints jersey. How you doing, Scotty Waddles, Mr. Slapshot?
Hey, I didn't lose my voice, you know that. Hey now.
Hey, now we're looking at the John Levy thing and the Antiquitech, the electric, the free energy. It's not something that I've covered a lot because honestly, there's so many ways to get free energy. I mean, it's like choose one. Do you want to use hydroelectric or atmospheric? I mean,
Exactly.
I'm not good at it, but there's people out there that seems like they, you know, give them a coffee can, a running creek, and the next thing you know, they're powering a light bulb and stuff.
Yeah, you know, like you said, I've just started watching some of John Levy's stuff, but like I told you right off the jump that I got from him about all the old architecture, it just makes so much sense that it was just too much for their needs and for their abilities of the time. You know, you look at this Palace of Versailles, you look at all these things, and that's just too much for their needs, for the amount of people and who live there. And then when you look at that, then it's like they didn't even have the manpower or the skills to do it. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. And then Static comes along going, look, 5 guys can make 10,000
That made a big impact on both of us, Tommy, when John Levy was saying, you know, I've gone to church in a strip mall.
Right.
I've gotten my license renewed at a strip mall.
Yeah.
He's gone to work in a strip mall. It's like, you know, you build what you need, not like, oh, I'm going to build a
Exactly, Alan. Paco hit it right on the head because look at what we've built in the. Sorry, I got the Morgellons still on my face. But look at what we've built in the last 40, 50 years. Yes, we've built amazing skyscrapers, and we built But when we build homes, mostly they're kind of kit homes.
Just what
hate to say it, but they're put together, they're slapped together. A lot of them, aren't built that well as far as they're half left in the rain, and they're just not built with the care. And we throw them up, we slap up neighborhoods. I watched them slap up Aurora, Illinois. They slapped that thing up like, I'm telling you, it was an old town, but then they slapped it up like in 2 years. It was just boom. They put, they could build thousands of houses now because mostly it's just wood and things of that. But when you're talking about building these incredible buildings, we don't even know what these buildings were made of. We're saying, oh, they're made of concrete, they're made of this. No, really? No, we don't really actually. When you look at these amazing buildings that have these amazing, Antiquitech on top, and you could just spot that this is not a building that we would ever build unless it was like a multi-billionaire. And yes, they do build buildings right now that are in the echo of the past. We have always built buildings that are in the echo of the past. And I'm saying as we go back in time, we get smarter as a people on a whole. Maybe in times we've been knocked down and reset. Yes, we've been resetted with Noah's flood. We've been resetted by the Mudflood with Armageddon. And then we were reset by the wheats and the tares being split. So I'm saying there are resets. There could be more that we're not even accounting for. But I'm saying when you go back in time, mostly, we kind of get smarter ecologically. But then that's what the 1,000-year reign of Christ showed us, how to pull the energy right out of the sky with these buildings. That was the difference from the star forts of the Old Testament, possibly. We don't know for sure. But if the star forts ruled the Old Testament world, what I'm saying that Jesus in his 1,000 years brought these amazing buildings in these cities that we still see part of them of today everywhere all around the world. If you want to call it Tartaria, if you want to call it, but they're sucking the energy. And I'm saying right now, we are sucking as much energy. I'm pulling my hand down. We're sucking the energy right out of the sky, pulling it right out of the sky, jamming it down the wires that everybody in this world is using. If you have wires that come into your, and you're plugging into them, that's because Jesus showed us how to just suck the power right out of the sky, and they're doing it, and they're charging you for it. Like, and they're getting it for free almost, you know? And so that's what all these cities are. And let's not be fooled, you know? Let's not be fooled. That's why our world is breaking down, because right now we have maxed out the electrical grid of our world, the electrical conductivity of the dome and whatever's below us, whatever is the positive and the negative and the ground effect, because in power you have a positive, you have a hot, which is the positive, you have a neutral, which is the other half of the positive. Don't ask me what a freaking neutral is. But then you have the ground, which sticks into the ground just 8 feet. That's it. You just pound a copper wire, a copper rod into the ground 8 feet, and you get your ground. Let's
get Tommy's view on this. Tommy, what is the neutral? What is the positive? Is it a frequency? I mean, how is this incorporating into God's judgment?
Well, that's funny that Scotty said that. He didn't know what a neutral is. Most electricians and electrical engineers can't explain how the cycle really works, how you form a positive and a negative and then a neutral. It works that way, you know, and I know
they tell you that they're a deliverer. They're a deliverer of the power. They don't create it.
Right.
That's what all of them do.
Right. And like I unveiled he commented about, static stuff, and static. I've watched them too. And this whole thing, it's like you telling me that this town I'm in of Orange, we have 18,000 people, that the workforce here, and we're only going to build a small castle, was able to do that. And we had a quarry, we had donkeys or horses and carts, and okay, we had the force to build that. We're building one deal. Okay, then who grew all the food? Who did all the other?
Right, Tommy. Good point. Good point.
Well, if you're building this, it's going to take a force.
Right.
Rest. And it just makes no sense.
Right. Who's raising the children? Because when they factor in, when you look at the count of the people, they're not telling you, they're telling you, okay, it's 25,000 in this town, but that wasn't all men. There's women and children there too. So who's growing the food? Who's raising the children? Who's the doctor? Who's the dentist? Who's that? Not just building the home, not just building these incredible freaking buildings, but with horse and buggies, but who's taking care of the whole town? Come on, we know
the children were the ones working in the factories, while the parents were the ones building the cathedral.
But the overall theme is that's just too much for their needs.
Right.
Nobody rolls up on a brand new plot of land and goes, instead of just building shelter, we're going to build a cathedral.
They just dug it out, man. It was so easy. The time that it took them. The time that they're lying, they
that video now and get a better idea of what Tommy's talking about.
So amazing.
They're not just building for their need; they're building for some crazy.
Yeah, just over the top.
High-speed automobiles, and I want to consider the likelihood of the Spaniards making it up to the basin via horse and mule and wagons, of course, to haul supplies and everything that would initially become ruins. I question the reality of making it to the basin from the sea, first by ship and again later by horse and wagon, having all your tools and provisions. And I ask you to imagine yourself hitting the coast of America on a boat, unloading horse and wagon, and trekking off into the Rockies. How long before you would run out of food or a wagon would break or a horse would die. And I take this further. Forget about the Spaniards and the great difficulty and almost impossibility in accepting that narrative. But I pose the same questions when it comes to the Mormons arriving in Utah again, much later, yet in the same predicament. Horse, wagon, starting from scratch. Again, in this case, trekking west into the Rockies. No roads, no vehicles, and from Illinois to Utah. Just from Colorado to Salt Lake City, I think the first 3 passes would deter any travel. But again, using the Mormons in Salt Lake City as an example, upon arriving to Salt Lake City, within the first 2 years, we see these dozen buildings built of brick, concrete, stone, metals, all within the first 2 years. Again, now forget the impossibility of the travel with no roads through the Rockies, full of streams and mountain passes. But now what of beginning construction with these same means? Horse, no electricity, no nothing. Starting from scratch, a small party. And yet we see buildings that are in ruins, that are resembling Roman ruins and medieval castles, all in this early time period. And in one breath, they want to sell a narrative of a early settler building log cabins, including the narrative with Abraham Lincoln, portraying this very simple people. And yet this architecture of the old world America seems to be beyond the abilities or needs of the people of that time. And I propose that the remains of the old world can be seen everywhere. And the writers of our history have simply twisted the story in one breath, trying to tell us how primitive our forefathers were, and right alongside giving pretty ridiculous stories about how our primitive ancestors built all these wonders, oftentimes in 1 year. Here, for example, we see the Chateau Frontenac in Canada, Quebec. This was supposed to be a railroad hotel. It was built in 1 year, we are told. Again, with the same primitive means, horse, wagon, ropes, and unbelievable. It would be unbelievable to construct this in 1 year today, let alone without power in a very early time period, as we are told. And so what do I believe happened to this past civilization in which we find ourselves amongst the ruins, all throughout the world, everybody walking about day to day amongst the ruins of a past and forgotten,
verses 448.
explained away as built by our primitive ancestors. And for the most part, the masses have bought it all, as if cast under some great spell. And so where did they go? Many would ask, why don't the native people of all the lands speak of this? And the truth is they do. The Navajo and Hopi speak of the Anasazi, the ancient ones who built cities, and much of it in ruins, even when the natives were occupying most of the lands. And what appears to have happened is a great cataclysm, and the natives are survivors of this cataclysm, survivors existing all throughout the realm, all different races surviving this cataclysm in small pockets, having to start off from scratch once again. And this cataclysm seems to have happened around the 1300s, and this may have been what we understand as a great flood. Also great earthquakes, tsunamis, plasma events in the sky raining down on the realm. An event that may have caused the Grand Canyon overnight, creating new lakes and equally new deserts where there once was water. But yet we survived. And I think by the 1500s, we begin to see a reshuffling, a restructuring of civilization. And our narrative attributes this to many different things, such as crusades and the Spanish Inquisition, wars of all sorts. And this would continue until our present time. All sorts of events which actually have another agenda, the restructuring of civilization. And it would take us until now, until at least the 1930s, 40s, to get our act together. And we would reuse all the ideas of the old world, but simplify them and dumb them down. Buildings would become perfectly square cubes instead of these elaborate works of architecture that we see in the past. We would now become a civilization of pure function, disregarding form, beauty, and grace. It seems the first buildings we really start building are coined brutalist architecture, lacking any soul, very cold, and purely functional. As if suddenly our humanity is being stripped and we're being conditioned like robots. Even in World War blank, we see people marching like robots, and people begin to lose any form of leisure and connection to spirit in exchange for a 9 to 5 and not enough time or money. And suddenly the log cabin seems like a luxury in the world that we're living in. And when it comes to these buildings of the old world, well, these are beyond luxury and beyond reason. So that's it. That's my point. I hope that made some sort of sense. And I thank you for joining me. Please like, comment, and subscribe.
Tommy, that's pretty intriguing stuff, don't you think?
Yeah, and it points out, and in the chat over here, there's a lot of good questions, a lot of good statements, but for me, this all just points out the fact that we know we've been lied to, number one, and number two, that yes, there is technology that is being hidden from us. There is technology. There were people that were way beyond our norm today, and that's the whole reason that we do these things, is because we've been lied to, guys. We know
tech from the past and tech from the present. They've lied to us, not only from the past but the present.
Sure.
Yeah.
And on that note, I'm glad you said that, Scotty. I got one queued up here, Alan, that Anthony shared. Let me share this.
Oh, cool. Let's check it out.
This was really good. Where is it?
What I am about to tell you might change the way you listen to music forever. Around 1885, the Music Commission of the Italian government declared that all instruments and orchestras should use a tuning fork that vibrated at 440 Hz, which was different from the original standard of 432 Hz used in France and throughout most of the world. In 1917, the American Federation of Musicians endorsed the Italians and began tuning in 440 Hz. Interestingly, in 1917, the United States officially entered World War I. Then in 1953, a worldwide agreement was signed between all nations. This frequency became the standard ISO 16 reference for tuning of all musical instruments. This tone standard is now accepted all over the world.
What other agreement did all the nations sign?
Wow. Did he say 1885?
Yep.
Wow. I thought it was later than that. That's early.
I did too.
That's early, Tommy. I thought it was like in the 1900s.
Yeah, he'll keep going. What's this?
Wow.
Yeah, this is crazy.
It remains a mystery why this frequency was chosen in the first place. In fact, there are many people who disagree with this standard. They consider the 440 Hz, middle A, to be an abomination against nature. There are indeed clues that points to 432 Hz as a more natural frequency for the correct middle A, also known as Verdi's A, a pure tone of math, fundamental to nature, and is mathematically consistent with the patterns of the universe, vibrating with pi and the golden ratio. What is 440 Hz? 440 Hz is the unnatural standard tuning frequency removed from the symmetry of sacred vibrations and overtones. There is a theory that the change from 432 Hz to 440 Hz was dictated by Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels. Apparently, he used it to make people think and feel a certain manner, and to make them a prisoner of their own consciousness. In a paper entitled Musical Cult Control, Dr. Leonard Horowitz writes, "The music industry features this imposed frequency that is herding populations into greater aggression, psychosocial agitation, and emotional distress, predisposing people to physical illness. Believe me, they know exactly what they are doing. They are successfully lowering the vibrations of not only the young generation, but the rest of us as well. If one should desire to know whether a kingdom is well governed, if its morals are good or bad, the quality of its music will furnish the answer." Confucius. You just need to go out into the street and take a look around. What do you see? School kids, young adults on their way to work, and what do they all have in common? iPhones or MP3 players. Ingenious, isn't it? These destructive frequencies entertain the thoughts towards disruption, disharmony, and disunity. They also stimulate the controlling organ of the body and the brain into disharmonious resonance, which ultimately creates mind control. Some suspect that the Rockefeller Foundation had an interest in making sure that the United States adopted the 440 Hz standard as part of a war on consciousness, leading to musical cult control. If you only knew the magnificence of the 3, 6, and 9, then you would have a key to the universe. We have been left the method of counting and measurement, and the importance of dividing a unit by 12 seems to be the main rule given that has been adopted by humanity. Here are some of the ways that I found 12 to be an important number. 12 months of the year, 12 hours of a clock, 12 inches to the foot, 12 apostles of Christ, 12 constellations of the zodiac, 12 tribes of Israel, 12 knights of the round table, and there's much more. What happens when you divide today's music standard of A 440 Hz by 12? 440 Hz divided by 12 equals
36.66666666666667.
So what happens when you divide A 432 Hz, known as Verdi's A, an alternative tuning that is mathematically consistent with the universe, by 12? 432 Hz divided by 12 equals just 36. I heard it said perfectly that 440 Hz is pretending to be sacred geometry.
What I'm saying to you is you should give it to somebody that don't know any better, because that's a fugazi. Alright?
440 Hz is the closest one can come to the real thing, while still being an imposter. 432 Hz divided by 12 equals 36. 3 plus 6 equals 9. 432 Hz equals 369. There are two ways of expressing the same thing. Next, let's look further into how the 432 Hz frequency is in time itself. Is our number system and method of timekeeping entirely based on 432 Hz, 9-base mathematics? How many seconds are in 12 hours? 43,200. That's 432. Divide or multiply a whole unit by 12. So 60 seconds times 12 equals 43,200 seconds.
Hey, Tommy, can you pause it for a second?
430.
I basically have finally realized that the difference between these frequencies and what they're showing you is that they changed it from a rational number to an irrational.
That's what I was just thinking, now.
So it's all about the mathematics. And it goes back to that. There are numbers like phi and some other things that
440.
They just go on forever. You never can figure out pi because it doesn't end, so they can't use those numbers. So it's really crazy. Go ahead and keep running it, Tommy. I'm picking some stuff here, man.
Can I just say one thing before you run it?
Can you?
Did they say that in 1885 or whatever that they changed the instruments because they didn't really have recordings back then to change the hertz? They changed every instrument. They went around, changed tubas and pianos and horns and drums and how did they
No,
change?
he wanted to start using a different tuning fork.
Yeah, they changed the tuning fork.
Oh, the tuning fork, not the instruments.
No.
Yeah, you tune your instruments to a new
Oh.
tuning fork frequency.
And when
Oh,
I
I get it.
when I heard that, that told me that was the devil loose. One of the first things he did, let's change the music.
Right.
40 hertz tuning fork.
But I was thinking, how the hell do you change all the instruments around the world that people own? No, we changed the tuning fork so that when they played on a live or on a way that was recorded or on a way that was for the public, it had to be tuned. Now, oh, I see. That's sneaky.
Yeah.
And that's why now you cannot perfectly tune a piano. You can only get it close. Okay, let's go. Fire back up, Tommy.
Yeah, it's almost done.
Sorry.
36.666 times 12 equals 440. Interesting, isn't it? They are all related. They are perfect musical overtones of one another. Now check this out using vortex-based mathematics. 1 times 12 equals 12. 1 plus 2 equals 3. 2 times 12 equals 24. 2 plus 4 equals 6. 2 times 12 equals 24. 3 times 12 equals 36. 3 plus 6 equals 9. 4 times 12 equals 48. 4 plus 8 equals 12. 1 plus 2 equals 3. 5 times 12 equals 60.
That's a heartbeat.
0 equals 6.
That's a heartbeat. Look at it.
12 equals 72.
Look at it. That's a heartbeat.
2 equals 9.
Yeah.
Look at it.
Now, keep on going. You'll notice that our number system is all 3, 6, and 9, repeating forever. The numerical coincidences are too compelling. All over the world and for thousands of years, humanity has received certain number sequences. 108, 144, 360, 369, 432, 1080. But why? What is it about these numbers that jars something so deep within us that we incorporate them into our myths and spiritual beliefs? The answer could be in frequency harmonics. We measure sound frequencies and vibration cycles per second, and the numbers listed above, when played as frequencies, just happen to mirror the exact harmonic patterns found in nature. Music based on 432 Hz transmits beneficial healing energy because it is a pure tone of math fundamental to nature. Classical music such as Beethoven was created using 432 Hz, and research shows that this type of music helps plants grow faster and healthier. 432 Hz is a harmonic of light frequency. It speaks and resonates directly with our cells. All cells communicate with each other via infrared light. So imagine, when they receive music in 432 Hz, they are in joy. The conscious mind may not be aware of this, but most of what goes on in our bodies is subconscious. Sound in the air may be defined as the transfer of periodic movements between adjacent colliding atoms or molecules. Research says that music tuned from this frequency is easier to listen to, brighter, clearer, and contains more inherent dynamic range. As a result, music with this tuning does not need to be played at higher volumes, and this reduces the risk of hearing damage. Cosmic harmonious frequencies related to the 432 Hz frequency and its importance in the creation of physical reality from light and sound. Is it possible that over the course of thousands of years, we have somehow been guided in the process of creating this new form of communication? And if so, what type of information will we learn from it that could not be expressed in any other way? The underlying primary psychic reality is so inconceivably complex that it can be grasped only at the farthest reach of intuition, and then but very dimly. That is why it needs symbols. This is the biggest mystery. This universal truth was not available to the people of this planetary system. It is now finally being received on this planet by deep seekers of the truth and ready to receive it. Throughout history, numerous clues and hints regarding geometry and frequency have been staring at us, calling to us, and waiting for us to put them into place like pieces of a giant jigsaw puzzle. Here at the dawn of a new age, this sonic geometric puzzle is finally nearing completion, revealing the building blocks of a language based on energy, frequency, and form. Now, how do we tell the rest of the world that we need to reset the international concert pitch back to A432 Hz? Many people might say that this is nothing and barely noticeable, but why would they go through so much trouble to have this frequency change worldwide when some of the greatest classical music was created using 432?
Yes, the radio.
Secrets of the universe. Right. Think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration.
Yes. Never thought of that. The radio.
All right.
The whole radio is in 4 whatever. It's not in 440.
40. That's right.
Yeah, they changed it.
But it was a lot more recent because I thought that they
Yeah.
in the 50s.
Only in America in the 50s, in the late 50s, did they admit to doing it in America.
Right.
And all the way back then.
Didn't they do it when they changed the frequency of all the drive-ins? That frequency that you would tune in on your radio, and then they went from AM to FM.
FM, yeah.
Wasn't that the switch?
That was in the 90s, 80s, late 80s and 90s. But this in music industry in America, everything I've seen, it was the late 50s, early 60s where they started admitting that they're changing all the tuning and recordings from there on for musicians to 440. But that information says it started in Europe back in the 1880s. And they jumped on it back then. And they're just saying, we finally got it here.
Do we have recordings in 440 on
all
LPs?
Most all of our stuff is since the 60s is all 440.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah.
Very little of it. Like a deal I watched said, you'll hear older music from the 30s, 40s, gospel or just blues or something, and the hair will stand up on your arms. And it's because that's 432. You don't get that.
Oh,
you don't get that anymore. You don't get that from music anymore, any of the more modern stuff. But everything I'd read on it, I didn't know that it started in Europe back then with a priest that brought a tuning fork.
Crazy.
And changed it all right there.
One fork. Could fit in his back pocket.
And then they signed a treaty. What the hell? We sign an agreement worldwide to use 440? What's up with that?
That's got to say something. That's got to say something to the importance of it, right?
Exactly.
I mean, we broke every freaking treaty with the Native Americans, but we kept that one, and we kept the one that said you can't go to the North Pole too. You can't go to the no. You can go to Antarctica because those suckers go down south. They show us. So they might skim the surface and let them land on the ice or whatever the hell's down there, but they don't let us go to the North Pole. And that's what I'm saying. What is the North Pole? I've always asked that. The North Pole is the only place on the flat earth that you could pinpoint in the center that you could say is right here.
Right.
And I don't know. It's just somewhere that doesn't exist on our map anymore. Very interesting.
If you want a good example of the 432 versus 440 on YouTube, the Conspiracy Music Guru, he has an interview or two where he does that for the people interviewing. It's early on, and he says, "Okay, here I'm gonna play some music, and it's in it's in 440, and then I'm gonna play you some 432." And the people are going, "Oh my God, you can feel the difference in your body."
Wow.
They're going, "Geez, the hair stands up on my arms when I hear the 432, but the other, it's like it's uncomfortable." And he does real good examples of that.
Is that why when you go into the old churches with that old organ and they would play that old organ, you would just feel like, whoa, you'd feel that. You don't feel that much. I don't hear the old organ in the churches anymore.
Cymatics, those buildings, the cymatics, a note hit in there would become, it's perfect thing, and echo.
Right. Because of the way they had the the way they had the organ in the back and the tubes in front, and the people kind of in the middle. It kind of had this reverberation, this elongated reverberation, especially in the cathedrals. And what Paco said about the cathedrals, I never knew. As stupid as I am, I never knew about the tuning of the instruments back in 1850. And now I never knew that the bishop seat was why a cathedral is a cathedral. It had a bishop seat and a throne.
Right.
Hello, Paco. Paco's killing it today, man. Hey, welcome back to YouTube land and to StreamYard world.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're celebrating today.
Who's
Heck
ever
yeah.
heard of, who's ever, I haven't made a video about
Paco's
Xavier
the
St.
man.
George in a long time, have I?
Paco's the man. Alan
This is
is
the Black Mozart. The
Black Mozart. Is he like Black Jesus and Black?
I don't know. It's
Was
just
Abraham Lincoln black? Was George Washington black? Do we know anybody's color anymore?
So anyway, he was a French classical composer, virtuoso violinist, a conductor of the leading symphony orchestra in Paris, a renowned champion fencer, born in the French colony of Guadeloupe. He was the son of Georges de Bellarmine Saint Georges, a wealthy married planter, and he called his wife Nanon. His wife was a African slave. This young man was born, and he's the guy that they think they gave Mozart the credit for his work.
Huh.
This was where he was born.
Right.
His father was he was a musketeer type of one of those guys.
That's cool. I wish my dad was a musketeer. How cool would that be?
The drawback is he was a mulatto.
Look at his threads, though. Go back and look at his threads. If that picture is real, man, he had some bad threads. That's nice. Look at those clothes. Come on. Where do we make clothes like that?
We don't know the warp and the woof of how to make those clothes.
Right.
Otzi the Iceman, who was found frozen in ice.
Oh, he had the nicest stuff.
We did.
Frozen in a brick of ice. Hello.
Now this is how they like to show him, kind of a bit more whiter now. By the time he turned 22,
they bleached him.
They like to include him in the Masons. Who knows? Who knows?
Look at that star fort. Tell me that wasn't a star fort. Tell me that wasn't.
He could get it done, man. He could write that music.
Look at that's a star fort right there. Hello.
You're killing him, Alan.
Anyway,
Awesome.
This is the girl that he should have not been such a good sword fighter with, because he got himself killed over her.
Thanks.
I think
Look
he
at this
brought
guy.
bought a sword to a knife fight.
What's weird about George Washington?
What?
Can you go back to George Washington? What's weird about him? What's weird about that body? Is there something weird about that body and the head and what's weird about that? They always portray him like a weird, I don't know. Sorry.
That's not George Washington.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's the guy.
Oh, it looks weird.
It looked weird. I'm sorry. Never mind.
This looks weird.
You've been programmed with a whole other picture, Scotty.
I think everybody with a wig is George Washington.
You've been programmed.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Look at that big valley. What the heck was that in there?
I know that's the only size of that picture.
Look at that. Wow. What the heck is that?
It looks
What
like
is the it's like there's buildings all around, but what's in the center?
people in the stands watching a fight or something, or a
Wow. That looks like crazy. Sorry.
maybe they were watching this guy's sword fight. Oh, and he
punch-
slipped in. Look at him with the left.
Softpaw.
There's St. George and
There's
the
a
dragon.
softpaw.
And his old lady's whooping the other guy. Look behind him. His old lady beating that dude up.
He got knocked up. out.
This guy wouldn't be allowed on the Chinese news anymore because he's going, that's enough, mommy.
Right.
You heard me.
Those guys are big too, man. Whoever they are, they got some punch. Look at her though. She's like not messing around. This guy's like, nah, my eye hurts. I've had enough. It's got the college.
You know, of course, then again, they were probably, that was really a man dressed as a girl.
Right.
But there's more St. George, St. George. And
oh, yeah.
Look at the thumbnail of this video. That's from the 1930s.
Killing the jackass.
In the United States, where a guy is saying, you know, watch out, they're using explosives for logging, and they spell it in that funny way. But in their rewrites of history and everything else, they're using that's English, people.
Isn't that Jesus though?
To us in the day, and they're saying this. That's because they rewrote.
Isn't St. George Jesus? Isn't St. George Jesus?
No.
Who is St. George?
Probably.
I saw those videos too, Scotty.
Wasn't that Jesus or no?
I think it's John the Baptist.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, that makes
John.
sense. Sorry, that makes sense.
Prester John or John the Baptist, whatever you want to call him, because I still contend that the Lord Jesus Christ and John the Baptist were famous all their life just based on their miracle births and the people that were in town when it happened, you know, and what they heard about it.
And they were cool guys, and they were different and cool and real and had truth and
they
lived
came right
it.
out the gate going like, preach that baptism of repentance.
And when you got close to them, you felt the presence of the Lord. Either you ran or you got on your knees and was like, what do I do? And that's what we're doing right now.
All right. It feels weird to be awake.
It feels weird to be a truther. You should feel weird. If you're not feeling weird right now, you better check yourself.
Right.
This is a strange. This
You're
is
the
a
coolest
strange.
dude in the world.
This is a strange experience. Thank Jesus, I'm going through it right now.
I told Alan that the other day. Man, it sure is cool being born at this time.
It's weird. It's strange. It's a peculiar world to look into. But man, when you start, I told my mom today, I'm like, when you see it, Mom, I'm like, my mom's like almost 80 years old, still driving. I'm like, when you see it, Mom, I'm like, you can't debate it because it's real. It's in real. You could touch the bricks I have, the 2 bricks I have that I want to put on a tour. I want to send them to you guys. I want to send them down to you guys in Texas. I want to send those bricks as soon as I can in a crate. I want you guys to hold them. I want you to see the pocket and I want you to just look at the construction of them and look at this was I believe was the wheats and the tares being split, the mud flood when this building got hit and the reason these bricks are in the whole neighborhood on that street, and everybody went out and grabbed them off the building, and they're just whether or not they grabbed them in the last 20 years or not, I don't know. But I dug 2 of them up just in the last, 5 years. So if I can still dig 2 up, there's still, and it shows the conductor. There was a conductor and there's a pocket inside, and it was the heating of the face of these buildings, the Antiquitech on top and everything, and the whatever they were doing for power. These buildings are still doing them. They're still doing it. They're still working. That's the amazing part.
There's so much like that that's so fascinating that if we just knew the truth.
Right.
If it was real, if we followed Wikipedia and what they said was real per wattage, if you go look in Chicago, downtown Chicago, we would have a coal burning plant every 5 miles.
Right.
You'd have to have this. You'd have to have this dirty coal burning plant, burning filthy coal and just dusting the air with this dirty nastiness because there's not enough power that we produce in our world to add up for the power that we use. We only do a fraction of the power, and that power that empowers the transformer fields behind the Commonwealth Edison buildings, and that's what sucks it out of the sky. And what I'm saying is, right now, that's what we're relying on, and
Oh, I believe we
it's
have been for a while.
it's amazing. It's amazing the transfer of power.
Out the higher they put up those poles, the more power they could harness.
But I'm saying that's why we see the increase in the tornadoes and the hurricanes and the storms. It's not only man-made, it's man-made, but it's not purposely man-made like set out today. It's man-made over time. It's man-made because we're sucking so much power. We are maxing the world out right now, I believe. We're just, and it's okay because God made it that way, but we should be balancing it more with natural things, and we're not, because they've cut us off from the natural world.
Well, that's the thing, is that this is going to be a separation. It really is, and it's happening right now.
That's the bottom line.
And
yeah.
That's what we need to.
Absolutely. And that's what we can't fight that no more, because I believe their world is burning out on them, and soon it'll burn out on us if we're in it. And I don't want to be in the electrical grid. I don't want to be in the cities when that happens. I believe we still have a couple of years, but God is preparing us.
Right.
Here we're gonna look at now, because Conspiracy R Us made 2 videos on the millennial reign, and it talks a little bit about St. George. So thanks for staying with me. Appreciate it mucho.
These are cool videos. These are good videos, man. He does do some good. It does get me. It makes my head tingle.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back for another episode. Today, we're going to be talking about the millennial reign of Christ, part 2.
Perfect
St.
voice.
George and the Sevenfold Son. Now, the basic premise of this video is that the second coming of Jesus Christ, what if it's already happened? It's in our past, not in our future, from a biblical and Christian perspective. And just to recap a little bit, part 1, there's a lot of verses which indicate that Jesus was going to be returning imminently. And this is just one chapter which sort of talks about it. And to set the stage, Jesus is just talking to his disciples on the Mount of Olives, and they're asking him about the end times. And some of these verses, they're just talking about all the things that will happen, and like earthquakes, pestilence, wars, rumors of wars, all these things, false prophets, antichrist, the whole list of things you've probably heard before. And then another verse later on goes to talk about how the Son of Man will be coming in a cloud with power and great glory. So his return, he's coming back in the clouds. But here's the plot twist. Same chapter, just later on, verse 32, he goes on to say, I say unto you, this generation shall not pass away till all be fulfilled, indicating that he's talking to his disciples. So he's saying, you will see these things. They will be fulfilled in this generation. And there's other verses that back this up. And this is just one of them. Revelation, the final book of the Bible, chapter 1, verse 7. And it goes on to say, he is coming with the clouds, and every eye will see him, even those who pierced him. There were some Roman soldiers who pierced Jesus, and it's saying even they will see his return in the clouds again. So they need to be alive to do that, right? So that's for us, that's in our past, way in our past. So this is indicating an imminence as well, and it backs up what's being said here about this generation. So I was looking at after this Jesus' return, there's supposed to be the Armageddon, a major destructive event. And when I looked at what they term the fall of the Western Roman Empire, which is supposed to be a gradual fall over the course of roughly 100 years, you look at the damage that you see with what we're told is the Roman Empire, and it is quite extensive. And not only are things just completely destroyed, things are buried too in the bottom right. This is Rome, and I think it was in the 1930s. You have the videos of people trying to dig out Rome, and it's buried, like all these structures are buried under 20 feet of earth. So something pretty major happened. And even in overseas, in England, they were finding buried Roman villas all the time, and they come up with different stories as to why they're buried. But I'm thinking this was all related to an Armageddon event, not some gradual fall of the Western Roman Empire and whatever BS story they made up about why this is buried. And they also find underneath cathedrals, and this is in the United Kingdom as well, Exeter Cathedral, they were digging down for something else, and they stumbled onto a Roman bathhouse, didn't even know it was there. So again, and there's some story as to why it was like this. I'm thinking this is all related to potentially, I don't know for sure, I wasn't there obviously, but that's what I'm thinking. It's all related to an Armageddon event. Now, before I move on here, I just wanted to say, while looking into this cathedral, Exeter Cathedral, and other cathedrals, I was just wanting to know, like, do we even know, we always see organs in churches, do we even know, like, why is the organ, why are they in churches? Because they're in all of the cathedrals, right? It's like one of the standard pieces of equipment that's in these churches is an organ. And when you go to look up why are organs in churches, you find things like it remains an enigma and it's unclear. Now there's speculations, but they don't even know why these organs are even in these structures. And this is just Europe's largest pipe organ, St. Stephen's Cathedral, 1682, allegedly. But this thing is massive, and I think there's over 17,000 pipes. And again, something that keeps getting repeated over and over tells me there's a functionality to it other than just people listening to music. There's something to it, but the fact they don't know what's under a lot of these cathedrals, and they don't even know why these organs are there. I mean, everything with our history is just shrouded. I just wanted to bring.
Hey, Tommy, any comments on sound and vibration?
No, I mean, he's just, it's what it's all about. I'm learning so much more every day about this stuff. It's just amazing. Just amazing to me.
It was kind of funny. They don't know why, but so after the Armageddon event, Jesus returns. There's supposed to be 1,000-year reign of peace. But in our history, after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, they talk about the Dark Ages of 1,000 years. So are they right? And there was just this period of just general nothing happening, bad conditions all the way around, or was it maybe the best time to be alive? So that's what we're questioning. And now there's just two more events that are supposed to happen after the 1,000-year reign of Christ ends. Two other events are supposed to happen. One is that Satan is supposed to be let loose. And I think this is maybe where the events that we term the Mudflood occurred, or in and around this time, potentially. So he's let loose to deceive the nations. And there's talk about a second resurrection. Revelation chapter 20, verse 5, the rest of the dead live not again until the 1,000 years were finished. And of course, 1850s, we're looking at all these, looks like empty cities, the photos, and then you have an explosion of more population increases, and you have orphans, foundlings, orphan trains, you know, just children everywhere, orphanages, and it's just, you know, people showing up out of nowhere. So potentially, I'm thinking, you know, we're the second resurrection, and we're living in this time. So that's a quick recap, but now let's get on to some new stuff and talk about some of these topics I've prepared for you today. Now I want to talk about the curious case of St. George.
Okay. Show me.
That's so cool.
Okay, now I found this pretty interesting because if we look at the last book of the Bible again, the book of Revelation, there's some verses that talk about Jesus's return, and that he'll be riding on a white horse, and out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword. And when he comes back, he's coming back with the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses themselves. So he's coming back to wage war against the nations that are rebelling against him. So he's coming back for battle, and he's on a white horse. He's got a sword, and he's gonna take care of business, basically. So I wanted to touch upon this St. George character, because when you look at this St. George, St. George is usually associated on being on a white horse, and he's associated with defeating a dragon. But when you look at his history, the exact details of his life remain a mystery. And this particular saint is the patron saint of England, but not just England. You also have Venice, Genoa, Portugal, Ethiopia, and I think Germany and even some other countries all claim this one saint as their patron saint. For somebody whose life really remains a mystery, that's kind of interesting. And as I mentioned, he's often portrayed mounted upon a white horse. And there's even coinage. They tell us it's from this date, but the symbolism is very consistent. It's just, you have him on a horse, usually with a sword or a lance or a spear, and but it's across many different cultures, and there's all these statues of him as well. But this is the Czech Republic, Prague, supposedly 1373. I don't know about these dates, but there are all these statues dedicated to this character who nothing of his life or deeds can be established. So people are making this character, this, the person, character, St. George, he's the patron saint of countries. They're erecting statues and these equestrian statues to him. Here's another one, Zagreb in Croatia, they say from 1887. We've got one from there's a lot of these, but these are just some of them. This is from Stockholm in Sweden. And you've got Berlin in Germany, and it's just these consistent themes. So what I'm thinking is St. George might be some sort of tribute to when Jesus Christ returns in the clouds, and basically the defeat of Satan for the 1,000 years when he was thrown in the pit. Is this some sort of nod?
That does seem more like a type of Christ than John the Baptist, as when slaying the dragon, These are things that are going to need some more study and more thinking. I haven't seen this video in over a year,
Right.
and I'm curious of what he's going to. I don't even remember what he said about the sevenfold son. I'm going to make sure that this is.
To Jesus Christ, actually, in his return, because St. George is sort of associated with being a warrior, and that's what Jesus came to do, actually. And he's supposed to be really virtuous and all the character traits you would assign to Jesus. So I'm just wondering if that's what this is. And you even have these statues. A lot of them are bronze, but some are made out of wood. You even have these equestrian statues that are inside. A lot of times they're associated with churches, and a lot of times they're inside churches. So this is St. Nicholas's Cathedral in Stockholm, Sweden, and then this one's an awesome one, and it's an older one, but I don't know if I trust any of their dates. But it seems like a lot of effort went into sort of immortalizing somebody whose life is a mystery, making him, he's like a lot to do about somebody that we don't know anything about, really. So that's why I'm thinking there might be more to this St. George. This is another church, St. George's Church in Antwerp, Belgium. And just really interesting. And somebody did a study talking about it was talking about crossing cultural boundaries, and St. George in the Eastern Mediterranean, and there was a cult of St. George, and he's one of the most extraordinary examples of cohabitation among different religious communities. So you had, we're told anyway, this Greek Orthodox, Latins, and Muslims shared shrines dedicated. They tell us he was born in Cappadocia and he was a Roman soldier. This St. George was. I can't rely on anything they're saying about him, but this he was sort of worshipped by all these different cultures. And that's kind of what the premise of this paper was, like trying to explain why that is. And there's this really interesting wood carved statue of what we're told is St. George in Castoria, and I think this is in Greece. Now, the unique feature of this church in Castoria is a large wood carved statue of St. George, which is about 9 feet. I guess that would be approximately 9 feet. And of course, it's of unknown origin. And this is just to show you kind of what a typical male height relative to the statue would be. But you have, again, so you've got all these cultures worshiping this saint whose the detail and origin of his life are kind of, they're a little bit mystery, like nothing's defined. He's the patron saint of all these countries. And I just, and he's associated with as being a warrior and virtuous and noble and just. And he's on a lot of times on a white horse with a sword. So everything that is sort of associated with his second coming in the clouds and how he's coming as a warrior and to be just and to establish his kingdom. I'm thinking maybe there's some ties there. Again, we can't be sure. Food for thought. So, and that's going to take us to the book of Isaiah, which actually has a lot to say about the millennial reign of Christ. And we're going to look at a chapter in this particular book, and we're going to talk about the sevenfold son. Okay. Show me. It's chapter 30, the book of Isaiah, which is in the Old Testament of the Bible. And this is just, it's talking about there's a after Jesus comes back, Armageddon has happened. Jesus sets out to establish his kingdom on earth. And there's this period of regeneration of the earth. And this is just one verse kind of talking about that, verse 23. So it's going to return to Eden-like conditions. Now, there's a really interesting verse in this chapter, and I think it might tie into some of the things that we see as well. And it's a little further down, Isaiah chapter 30, verse 26. There's a reference to the light of the moon and the sun, and it says, moreover, the light of the moon shall be as the light of the sun, and the light of the sun shall be sevenfold as the light of 7 days. Now, there's this interesting reference basically to the fact there's not going to be nighttime. The moon will be giving off the light of the sun, and the sun is going to be supercharged. Now, it doesn't really say anything about heat, but it's talking about 7 times the brightness. So I'm sure there's other things happening to sort of make that manageable. But so you're going to have these more Eden-like conditions, more light, and you're probably.
Do you have any comments so far, Tommy?
Yeah, well, just on that verse right there, just it saying, it just hit me when I read it, that it increasing, the moon's not increasing, the sun's not increasing sevenfold, and then when it says how he'll bind you up and he'll heal your wounds with that energy. That's what I read, is that sevenfold energy is going to heal you just like that.
Might be something to that ultraviolet lights and different frequencies because we're not going to need sun in heaven. His light alone will keep us healthy.
Right, and the fact that the verse ends with he's going to bind us up and cure and heal our wounds, after he talks about the increase in the light.
Amen.
You know, that's what I thought.
Joel, any comments so far from you?
Hey man, no, I'm just reading the chat right now.
Oh,
I've
okay.
seen these videos like 4 times, 5 times. I love them.
Oh, great. So anybody have questions? Joel's seen them about 4 times already.
Joel has the answers, baby.
He's got probably better jump on most of it than us.
All right.
Longer climate year round. So why do I think that's interesting is because, again, we've been looking at this heating of historic structures, including church buildings, and there was this study done by the University of Cambridge, basically just pointing out, most church buildings prior to the 1800s, in the UK and elsewhere in Europe, and you could throw Russia in there, they were entirely unheated. And there was a study again by it was University of Cambridge, and they were just looking at all these different churches and the best way to heat them because no consideration was given for heating these structures. So I guess what I'm saying here is these structures were built during this time when the sun and the moon were giving off much more light, and the climate was much more moderate. So there was no winter. It never got cold. And if you look at the Palace of Versailles, these palaces were just impossible to heat. And we have stories that Louis XV decided to change his bedrooms from the main gallery to a smaller area of the palace because it was just too cold. In addition to waste management issues, they had a hard time heating this place. And when you look at it, it's just the idea that they didn't factor in keeping it warm or have a better answer than just a fireplace, it just doesn't seem logical. I mean, and we talked about the Palace of Versailles. If you just look at all the things they did just to get water to fountains, they had aqueducts, they had reservoirs, the pipes that sort of facilitated that, and they had a machine, a giant Marley machine, just to get the water from the River Seine 4 miles away. All of this engineering and heating and waste management for that issue, for that matter, they didn't plan for that stuff. So maybe I'm saying they didn't need to. And if you look at the palaces, for instance, another.
That's a pretty good argument he's got going there.
Well, yeah, it makes sense to me with the light and everything the way it was. You wouldn't need heat ever.
Yeah, King Louis the Fourth didn't need to go number 2.
Palace, the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. Again, it was impossible to heat. They went through like 3 heating systems. They started with fireplaces. A portion of it burnt down. Then they went to some like centralized heating system, but it was too dry. People were getting nosebleeds and coughing, so they had to humidify the air, and they would cancel. Sometimes balls were called off due to extreme cold. So again, all of the engineering that went into the Winter Palace, but they forgot that winter is a factor. So I'm suggesting this palace was built at a time when the climate was moderate and it was just continuous daylight. And again, if you look at castles, most medieval castles would have been incredibly cold. And I think, again, they belong to this period of time when the climate was moderate. Now, even if you look at infrastructure, I've talked about this particular, basically it is a water tower. There's a standpipe in there, and there's a powerhouse behind it, pumping station, and it's all steam powered. But we're told this is Detroit, Michigan, by the way, and we're told it was built in 1876. This Moorishly inspired minaret design, and when you look in the history of it, it turns out that somebody had to be assigned to fix the problem of the pipes freezing, because the architect hadn't thought of keeping the pipes need to be kept from freezing. So they had to install a coal burning stove at some point to prevent, because it gets cold in Detroit. So the people who did all this, they forgot again. And I guess what I'm suggesting is it wasn't an oversight, but the climate conditions were different. And just look at this place. I mean, unbelievable, this place. And it's just, there's nothing left of this, by the way. This is just an overhead view. And like this entire structure is gone. The water tower is gone. And this back here is also gone as well. I think this structure here is the only one that's left. But I wanted to point out there's a gate that is also really impressive. And again, I would suspect this gate was built at the same time the rest of this park was built, whenever that was, but it wasn't when they're telling us. It was a lot older. This gate is still around, but even in 1894, you've got all this infrastructure. They built all of the infrastructure, but yet the roads are still in horrible condition. It just doesn't seem like a match. And they've got trolleys, but they're being pulled by horses. So just this inconsistency. And I just wanted to show you a quick picture of, we've got our guys with the top hats, and I can't be certain, but I wouldn't be surprised if that hand was tucked in there for the old hidden hand sign. But just, this place was awesome. It was awesome. And just the last thing I wanted to hit on real quick is the New York Public Library. And again, they're telling us this is the main branch, and they're telling us it was established in 1895. But when you go in this place too, I mean, this is the main reading room, and you've got your oversized windows, elaborate ceiling. But as far as heating goes, if you go to the entrance, they have to put these airlocks in because they didn't actually design. Like when you open a door into a big expansive room, you're going to have a draft, and if it's cold out, that's not going to be good. So after the fact, you'll see these buildings with airlocks. Sometimes they're made out of wood, but you can always tell they were done after the fact. So I'm suggesting the structure was around during this this climate that was much more agreeable. And so I guess to sum up, I do believe we are living in this period of time after the 1,000-year reign of Christ. I think we're living in this time when the 1,000 years have expired and Satan's loose to deceive us. And it made me think of this movie called Prince of Darkness from John Carpenter, 1987, which sort of has it's a really creepy movie.
No, look, it's super scary anyway, for crying out loud.
Has that same theme that Satan is trying to get loose, but that's where I think we are. And I guess I'll leave it here for today. But until next time, take care. Bye.
That John Carpenter, he's the guy who did that one Rollerball and a bunch of other famous movies.
Right. Yeah, that all those buildings, those verses in the Bible, we've got a good picture here of the post-millennial reign being where we are in time. We've got a lot of pieces to the puzzle, man. I mean, there's very little that you can't put together and go, what else explains it? Nothing else explains it. It's just too much. And the more that's uncovered every day, I think the whole frequency thing is the linchpin. Like they said, those cathedrals, the cymatic patterns in them, the windows with the colored stained glass, just you put all that together. There were healing centers. It was always perfectly heated or cooled. Everything was, during the millennial reign was ideal, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And that all worked to the benefit of the earth, of everything on the plane.
I think if you played one of those organs with 1,700 pipes, you could wake up the whole town if you had the.
Right.
Right. My goodness.
Right. So, Alan, I'm going to truck off to bed. It's getting late.
Okay.
I'm going to cash in.
All right.
Take care, buddy.
All right, bro. Later. Good night.
Peace, Tommy.
Good night, everybody. Discernment. Good vibrations.
Amen, brother. Amen. Yeah, autodidactic means self-taught. We're over here being taught by the Holy Spirit. Hey, that's a good. That is a good look at that. Let me see. I wanted to just cover a little bit of the Bible tonight. Look into, the book of Ezra. So let's just look at that. And we're trained in our mind, to hear about, they just rebuilt the temple and everything went great right after that. And oh boy, God just always watched out for him. But if you read the book of Ezra and Nehemiah, they almost drove Ezra and Nehemiah out of their mind. So let's just pick it up here in Ezra chapter 10, verse 9, and I'll get your thoughts here in the comments and anything from Joel or anybody else that wants to jump on. What do you think about this compared to what the common memory is of, they had a sword in their hand at a trowel, God gave them a mind to work, and boom, they're done. I'm going to back it up to verse 7. And a proclamation was made throughout Judah and Jerusalem to all the returned exiles that they should assemble at Jerusalem. And if anyone did not come within 3 days by orders of the officials and elders, all his property should be forfeited
and he himself banned from the congregation of the exiles. Then all the men of Judah and Benjamin assembled at Jerusalem within 3 days. It was the 9th month, on the 20th day of the month. And all the people sat in the open square before the house of God, trembling because of this matter and because of the heavy rain. And Ezra the priest stood up and said to them, you have broken faith and married foreign women, and so increased the guilt of Israel. Now then, make confession to the Lord, the God of your fathers, and do his will. Separate yourself from the peoples of the land and from the foreign wives. Then all the assembly answered with a loud voice, It is so. We must do as you have said. But the people are many, and it is a time of heavy rain. We cannot stand in the open. Nor is this a task for 1 day or for 2, for we have greatly transgressed in this matter. Let our officials stand for the whole assembly. Let in all our cities who have taken foreign wives come at appointed times, and with them the elders and judges of every city, until the fierce wrath of our God over this matter is turned away from us. Only Jonathan, the son of Isashal, and Jehaziah, the son of Tikvah, opposed this, and Meshullam and Sabbathai, the Levite, supported them. Then the returned exiles did so. Ezra the priest selected men, heads of the father's house, according to their father's houses, each of them designated by name. Excuse me, let me get a drink here. So we're at a very, this is all happening while they're just supposed to be building this. And what have they been doing? Greatly transgressing, as usual.
All right. So can you break it down a little bit? I know you didn't finish it yet, but where are we at in this right now? I guess I'm not under. I don't have enough study under my belt to just automatically know the situation.
This is the situation of rebuilding the temple that had been destroyed, and then the prophecy of Jeremiah, that Daniel discerned that 70 years. This is that, this is that time with the rebuilding in the 70 years. And even when they were rebuilding Jerusalem, they were still messing it up. They were still taking foreign wives, and even worse, as we find out. So that's where we're at. And then I kind of just want to go into description of when they were working. It describes the star fort they're building and how big it was. So that's where we're going with this short Bible study.
Okay.
Verse 14, let our officials stand for the whole assembly. Jonathan and Ashael disagreed. Ezra chose these people, and they all gathered. In verse 17, and by the first day of the first month, they had come to the end of all the men who had married foreign wives. Now there were found some of the sons of the priests who had married foreign women, and it names Maaseiah, Eleazar, Jarib, Gedaliah, some of the sons of Yeshua, and some of Jezoiak and his brothers. They pledged themselves to put away their wives. Is that what happened? It sounds like what happened here in the United States when, okay, what? I got these quadroons and other partial blacks aren't going to be inherited. Okay, well, they're not our real wives anyway. It might have happened all over the world. It might have been that these people were dealing with strange things, but it's not unprecedented in history. So they pledged themselves in verse 19 to put away their wives, and their guilt offering was a ram of the flock for their guilt. Thank God that we live by the spirit of the law and not the letter of the law now. Amen. Hallelujah. Verse 20.
And so there were these sons. Verse 21, they put away their wives. They name them by name. We'll know some of these people if they repented. And so look at that. This is the name of all the famous people that had taken it, and gatekeepers. Verse 44, all these had married foreign women, and some of the women had even borne children. And that's how the book ends? Isn't that crazy? Where's the big happy ending, you know?
Well, I'm going to have to go back and check this out because I'm trying to figure out, number one, was it God who said you have 3 days to come here? Like, did God tell them to say that? Or did they just, with their position of power, say, look, you have 3 days to get up here or else everything you own is forfeited? Was that God that wanted that? And then was it God that wanted
that was Ezra.
Okay, yeah, that was the priest. So then that's what I'm saying. So did God tell him to tell them they have 3 days? Because I know that there's times that God, I've done things on my own, and then I know there's things that I've done and said that He's told me to do and say.
Right.
So did God?
There is a people that are in charge of the church of God's people.
Right. So was it, when it comes to the reconciling the situation, marrying, who I guess they shouldn't have married originally, is that how God wanted them to handle the situation, to put away their wife that they had already married? Or is that what they came up with in their own carnal mind to try and make things okay? Because it says they pledged, you know what I mean? Was this something God required of them, or did they scramble and decide, okay, Lord, I promise this is what I'll do?
We're talking about Israel here. So what they say and what they do are two different things almost every time. And whenever they're worked up with and reminded of their great sin and given another chance, they jump at the chance to say, oh, I'll do better this time, but they never do. And they never did. And eventually it wasn't just the tribes of Israel. Ezekiel laid on his side 360 days for Israel and only 40 days, which symbolized the 40 years of the corruption of Judah. So even when Judah was destined to go bad, but Israel, they had no good kings. They did everything wrong from the time they rebuilt. If you read Ezra and Nehemiah, Nehemiah gets so mad when he came back, Tobiah had set up his office in the temple, and he was only gone for a couple of years.
Okay.
It is complete insanity, the Sunday school stories of how, that God, it was just a great time of God's people rebuilding the city, and that Darius paid for it all. Because let me find some more verses in Ezra that might surprise you of what was going down, because they were all going broke, Let's see here. Let's just pick it. No, I don't want to just pick it up at a point and run into it. Oh, this is getting prayed about. This is what they said in verse 9. I'll start at verse 5. And at the evening sacrifice, I arose from my fasting. This is Ezra again. With my garment and my cloak torn, and fell upon my knees and spread out my hands to the Lord, saying, and interrupting right here, you'll find out when you read Ezra and Nehemiah, when Nehemiah wasn't around, Ezra was in charge. Okay, because this was basically a deal done between the king of Babylon and Nehemiah, who was his food test. He tested the food for the king, is what Nehemiah's job was. Continuing on verse 6. Okay, so he's repented, he ripped his cloak, he's doing everything right before he pours his heart out, saying, oh my God, I am ashamed and blush to lift my face to you.
My God, for our iniquities have risen higher than our heads, and our guilt has mounted up to the heavens. From the days of our father to this day, we have been in great guilt. For our iniquities, we, our kings, and our priests have been given into the hand of the kings of the lands, to the sword, to captivity, to plundering, and to utter shame as it is today. For now, for a brief moment, favor has been shown by the Lord our God to leave us a remnant and to give us a secure hold within his holy place, that our God might brighten our eyes and grant us a little reviving from our slavery. Verse 9, for we are slaves, yet our God has not forsaken us in our slavery, but has extended to us his steadfast love before the kings of Persia, to grant us some reviving, to set up the house of our God, to repair its ruins, and to give us protection in Judea and Jerusalem. My interjection is, God is doing this for one reason. He is keeping his covenant to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, and to David, the covenant keepers, who he promised to Isaac, out of you all nations of the earth will be blessed. From you, David, will come the anointed one, the God in the flesh. And to do that, he had to maintain Judah for as long as until Boaz had to even have a Moabite wife, who Jesse, and then Obed, David, Solomon. Boom, everything's just going good. Verse 10, and now, our God, what shall we say after this? For we have forsaken your commandments, which you commanded by your servants the prophets, saying, the land that you are entering to take possession of is a land impure, with the impurity of the people of the lands, with their abominations that have filled it from end to end with their uncleanness. Therefore, do not give your daughters to their sons, neither take their daughters for your sons, and never seek their peace or prosperity, that you may be strong and eat the good of the land, and leave it for an inheritance to your children forever. And after all that has come upon us, for all our evil deeds and for our great guilt, seeing that you, our God, have punished us less than our iniquities deserve. He is the God of mercy. He is the God of love. God has punished them less than their iniquities deserve, and hath given us such a remnant as this. Shall we break your commandments again and intermarry with the people who practice these abominations? Would you not be angry with us until you consumed us, so that there would be no remnant nor any to escape? O Lord, the God of Israel, you are just, for we are left a remnant that has escaped as it is today. Behold, we are before you in guilt, for none can stand before you because of this. Same old story, same old song and dance.
Yeah, they suck, huh?
It's just insanity. It's just insanity. And they want people to send them money to right now. You know, hey, send them some money. Those are real Jews, you know. They just
That's
hate
a
it.
good idea. Let's do that. Let's send them a bunch of money to plant olive trees. You guys want to do it?
Let's send them a bunch of money for some olive trees, man. All they did was the Prince of Peace. All they did was say, let their blood be on our hands and our children. We don't care. We will not have this man, they called him, rule over us. They wanted free health care because he could heal them. They wanted free food. They know he could feed them. But they didn't, you know, it's like, what? Be more pure? No, thank you. That was their words. So anyway, Nehemiah, here's the deal with him. He heard that the wall was broken down from some of the people, and he was sad. It's starting in Nehemiah verse 1-4. As soon as I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for days. And I continued fasting and praying before the God of heaven. And I said, "Oh, Lord God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps covenants and steadfast love with those who love him and keep his commandments, let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayers of your servant that I now pray before you day and night for the people of Israel, your servants, confessing the sins of the people of Israel, which we have sinned against you. Even I and my father's house have sinned. We have acted very corruptly against you and have not kept your commandments, the statutes, and the rules that you commanded your servant Moses." Remember the word that you commanded your servant Moses, saying, "If you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the peoples. But if you return to me and keep my commandments and do them, though your outcasts are in the uttermost parts of heaven, from there I will gather them and bring them to the place that I have chosen to make my name dwell there. They are your servants and your people, whom you have redeemed by your great power and by your strong hand. O Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of your servant and to the prayer of your servants who delight to fear your name." Delight to fear his name. "And give success to your servant today, and grant him mercy in the sight of this man. Now I was the cupbearer to the king." And we all know what that entails. I mean, that's way up there, you know. And so he went in there to see him, and you know who it is? It's King Artaxerxes. You know who that is. It's that Persian king, you know, the 300. You killed my father and now I'm going to kill you. You know, it's like, it's that guy. It's Esther's uncle or something. I'm a little bit confused about which one it was, but it was this guy, Darius the Great. That's who he was talking to from the Bible. My man Nehemiah, he was his cupbearer. That's pretty cool. When wine was brought before him, I took out the wine and gave it to the king. Now I had not been sad in his presence. And the king, that King Darius, that guy, man, he said to him, "Why is your face sad, seeing you're not sick? This is nothing but sadness of the heart." Then I was very much afraid. I said to the king, "Let the king live forever. Why should not my face be sad when the city, the place of my father's graves, lies in ruins and its gates have been destroyed by fire?" Then the king said to me, "What are you requesting?" So I prayed to the God of heaven, and I said to the king, "If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in your sight, that you send me to Judah, to the city of my father's grave, that I may rebuild it." And the king said to me, the queen sitting beside him, "How long will you be gone, and when will you return?" I mean, that's pretty good friends with the king. That's he's thinking. He's like Joseph, right? You think, Joel? It's kind of like he's up there with the king, man.
Yeah, but he's just the flunky that is.
Well,
If he's the cup, all right. So hold on. You have the dude. Is he the same one that's testing the food?
well, he's a cupbearer. I don't know if he tested the food. I thought the ones that tested the wine tested the food. Maybe they had two. I don't know.
I
mean, it's not like he was Joseph, you know, but Joseph had to work his way up.
Amy, I was joking. My lack of voice right now really takes out my ability to be sarcastic. I guess he's up there, but I mean, part of me would be like, you're just a scapegoat being used in case someone tries to poison the king. I mean,
he was going to, you know, I wonder if the testers had testers, because he said, "You're guaranteeing me this wine is good," because everybody that if they came to me and I was going to give it to the king and I die, everybody else that touched that bottle is going to die.
Right.
Because we know they kept pretty good records. And so anyway, he gets approval and he goes down there to go fix it up. And like I was telling you earlier, I'm gonna start at verse 9. But this Sanballat, the Hornite, he bugs me so much. And Tobiah the Ammonite, these guys, I mean, right off the bat, I mean, I'm no I mean, I know they got to redo this and everything's got to happen because Jesus is going to, come back to this building. So, but to buy it and assemble it, they just drive me nuts. So, verse 9, then I came to the governors of the province beyond the river and gave them the king's letter. Now, the king had sent with me officers of the army and horsemen. But when Sanballat the Hornite and Tobiah the Ammonite servant heard this, it displeased him greatly that someone had come to seek the welfare of the people of Israel. They're Samaritans. They're from Israel. They're not from the tribe of Judah. So I went to Jerusalem and was there 3 days. Then I arose in the night, and I had a few men with me. And I told no one what my God had put into my heart to do for Jerusalem. There was no animal with me, but the one on which I rode. I went out by night by the valley gate to the dragon spring and to the dome gate, and I inspected the walls of Jerusalem that were broken down and its gates that had been destroyed by fire. Then I went on to the fountain gate and to the king's pool. And I think that, interjecting, that we just saw from the Conspiracy R Us video what a gate is in a star fort. Same thing. We know what star forts are. We know what the gates. These are what they're describing. Any comments before I go on verse 15, Joel?
No, I was just rereading it, just trying to get a picture.
Okay. I'm not trying to use up your voice. Just pace yourself. Verse 15. Then I went up in the night by the valley and inspected the wall, and I turned back and entered by the valley gate, and so returned. And the official did not know where I had gone or what I was doing, and I had not yet told the Jews, the priests, the nobles, the officials, and the rest who were to do the work. So, I mean, we see the picture of these people. We know what the Star Fort people were like. We know what Nehemiah was like. We know what a king that gets his food tasted and his wine tasted looks like. Verse 17, then I said to them, you see the trouble we are in, how Jerusalem lies in ruins with its gates burned. Come, let us build the wall of Jerusalem that we may no longer suffer derision. And I told them of the hand of my God that had been upon me for good, and also the words that the king had spoken to me. And they said, let us rise up and build. So they strengthened their hands for the good work. Then there's Sanballat and Tobiah, servant of Geshem the Arab, heard it. They jeered at us and despised us. And they said, what is this thing that you are doing? Are you rebelling against the king? Then I replied to them, the God of heaven will make us prosper, and we, his servants, will rise and build, but you have no portion or right or claim in Jerusalem, because they're Samaritans. They worshiped at the wrong mountain. And so here they got all these people going. I'm going to skip through a lot of this part here to try to get to them when they did get to build it. Now, verse 13 talks about Hanan and the inhabitants of Zanoah repaired the valley gate. They rebuilt it and set its doors. We know how big those doors are, and the cast iron, the rumbling metal, the drawbridges and stuff. That's what they were doing. They rebuilt it. They set its doors, its bolts, its bars, and repaired 1,000 cubits of the wall as far as the dome gate. Okay, now that's theirs. That's their people. That's their side of the wall, because and then they'll go by lots who gets those buildings, but they end up doing bribes and kickbacks.
So they had nuts and bolts going on, apparently, right?
You darn right they did, man. They were building what we would, or they were repairing one of the pre-flood star forts, because that's what those cities they moved into. Cities nobody in the Bible ever went except the bad Lamech. Let's go build some cities, because I just murdered some people and now I got to be separated, because God's going like, vengeance is mine. You can't kill him because the life is in the blood. And
It's got to go through judicial things. No witnesses. All we have is his bragging mouth, and stuff like that. So we don't know all that, but we know that bad Lamech went out and built some cities. But we do also know that God had infrastructure, I believe. So, but 1,000 cubits in between the gates, and you know that there's 12 gates on the city. So, wow, it's big. It's big as a star fort. And it also says, and its suburbs thereof, and the cities thereof, and the pasture lands thereof, is how they describe it in the book of Kings. And so this guy Shallum in verse 15, he's the son of that. He was the ruler of this district. He repaired the fountain gate. He rebuilt it, covered it, set its doors, its bolts, its bars. And he built the wall of the pool of Silah in the king's garden. So they're in charge of that. But we know what those pools look like in the star forts. And they're describing how you build the star forts. So then after him, Nehemiah, the son of Ezbuk, there's no relation to the Nehemiah, as far as I can tell, ruler of the half the district of Bethsur, repaired to a point opposite tombs of David. As far as the artificial pool, that's at the end of an aqueduct because you can't have the water come into town too fast. We've all seen those in star forts, and I've said it star forts. At least one more time, I pray, Heavenly Father, let their minds see the Bible was star forts. It's not anything about, and the hunter-gatherers decided to build a wall protection, and they started with a palisade wooden fence. Stop it. So all these gates got rebuilt like that. And I think that's just if you ever want to, if you ever want to know, here's one here. Here's when I might be reading into it. Verse 30 says, after him, Hananiah, the son of Shelemiah, and Hanan, the sixth son of Zalpha, repaired another section. After him, Meshullam, the son of Bechariah, repaired opposite his chamber. After him, Melchijah, one of the goldsmiths, already sticking your nose in there, repaired as far as the house of the temple servants and of the merchants opposite the muster gate. Just bugged me. And to the upper chamber of the corner. And between the upper chamber of the corner of the sheep gate, the goldsmiths and the merchants repaired. Well, dang, they got their own little thing going. Hey, we'll pay for this repair. We get this strip of the wall. So who's paying for it? Was it just King Darius? I know King Darius returned all of their gold goblets and things like that, but I don't think that he just said, here's your blank check, Nehemiah. So here was some opposition of the work and how it didn't just always go on, just no problem. So here's you should read it because they really mock him. If a fox goes up on it, he will break down their stone wall. And then listen to Nehemiah complain. Hear, O our God, for we are despised. Turn back their taunt on their own heads and give them up to be plundered in a land where they are captives. So Nehemiah is going out of his mind. Verse 6, so we built the wall, and all the wall was joined together to half its height, for the people had a mind to work. But when Sanballat and Tobiah and the Arabs and the Ammonites and the Ashdites heard that the repairing of the walls of Jerusalem was going forward and the breaches were beginning to be closed, they were very angry, and they all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem to cause confusion in it. And we prayed to our God and set a guard as protection against them day and night. In Judah, it was said the strength of those who bear the burdens is failing because they had been working. You put a mind on to work. Well, they're getting worn out. And the strength of those bearing the burden is failing. There is too much rubble. By ourselves, we are not able to rebuild the wall. And our enemy said they will not know or see till we come among them and kill them and stop the work. So they had that going against them. That doesn't sound like any fun. And then here's the the famous Sunday school verse. So neither I, verse 23, so neither I nor my brothers, nor my servants, nor the men of the guard who follow me, none of us took off our clothes, and each kept a weapon in his hand. And they had a trowel in one hand and they worked in the other. Now, stay with me, everybody. Here's what's happening and how fast it went away. If everything was so good, how did this happen in verse 5? Now there arose a great outcry of the people and of their wives, they already had wives, against their Jewish brothers. For there were those who said, with our sons and daughters we are many, so let us get grain that we may eat and keep alive. There were also those who said, we are mortgaging our fields, our vineyards, and our houses to get grain because of the famine. And there were those who said, we have borrowed money for the king's tax on our field and our vineyards. Now our flesh is as the flesh of our brothers. Our children are as their children, yet we are forcing our sons and daughters to be slaves. And some of our daughters have already been enslaved. But it is not in our power to help it, for other men have our fields and our vineyards, and we're only halfway through the book of Nehemiah. What's going on? I think that's a good question. Is it? I mean, I know that's not what she's talking about, but my goodness. I mean, in Sunday schools and anything, do people just brush over Ezra and Nehemiah because it's just like, yay, yay, trowel in one hand, sword in the other, Israel, we built the fort. They just make it seem like, hey, no problem. Nothing but problems.
So it looks like updog to me.
It looks like what?
Updog.
I'm still not getting it. What's that mean?
I said it looks like updog to me. Updog?
I don't get up dog.
Oh, so close, you guys. Who out there knows what I was doing to him? Someone did.
Is that one of those things like where you get somebody to say, "Oh,
Yeah.
what a goose I am"?
No, it's from The Office. It's a joke.
Oh.
I said it looks like updog to me. You're supposed to say, "What's up, dog?" And then I said, "Not much. What's up with you?"
Knock knock.
Well, you ruined it, so never mind.
Knock knock. Who's there?
there?
Dwayne the bathtub. I'm drowning. I'll get that joke next time. What's up, dog?
How many chapters are in Nehemiah? I'm not even familiar with.
11 or 12. And it just ends abruptly also. 13. And look at the way it ends. It's just like all of a sudden, here we go. Let's start in verse 23 through the end. In those days, also I saw the Jews who had married women from Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab. Half of their children spoke the language of Ashdod, and they could not speak the language of Judah, but only the language of each other. And I confronted them and cursed them and beat some of them and pulled out their hair. I made them take an oath in the name of God, saying, you shall not give your daughters to their sons, or take their daughters for your sons or for yourself. Did not Solomon, king of Israel, sin on account of such women? Among the many nations, there was no king like him, and he was beloved of his God, and God made him king over all Israel. Nevertheless, foreign women made even him to sin. Shall we then listen to you and do all these great evil and act treacherously against our God by marrying foreign women? Like in their answer, no matter what they say, their answer in the long run is always going to be, yep, I guess so. Continuing, verse 28. And one of the sons of Joahiah, the son of Elishab, the high priest, was the son-in-law of Sanballat the Hornite. Can you believe that they got? Therefore I chased him from me. Remember them, O my God, because they have desecrated the priesthood
and the covenant of the priesthood and the Levites. Thus I cleansed them from everything foreign, and I established the duties of the priest.
Oh, hey, will you share your screen?
Oh, I'm not sharing?
Yeah.
Man, I was really into reading.
So, yeah, sorry. You were earlier before.
Thus I cleaned them, verse 30, from everything foreign, and I established the duties of the priest and the Levites, each in his work, and I provided the wood for offering at appointed time and for the first fruits. Remember me, oh my God, for good. I mean, that's just one frustrated man. It's just crazy. It's like, I get it. They know not what they're doing. Forever. They had trouble paying the choir. Let's read Nehemiah verse 12:38. The other choir of those who gave thanks went to the north, and I followed them with half of the people on the wall above the tower of the ovens to the broad wall, and above the gate of Ephraim, and by the gate of Yeshana, and by the fish gate, and the tower of Hananiel, and the tower of the 100 to the sheep gate. And they came to a halt at the gate of the guard. He's describing, the dedication, and this was the order of the people marching into. We've seen those parades and paintings to where just all the people are gathered and praying. They finally did get it done because the Lord was going to have a place for Jesus to come back to. Now, here's how you got a job, where you live. So somebody asked earlier today, how did they decide who got in the city? Nehemiah 11, verse 1. Now the leaders of the people lived in Jerusalem, and the rest of the people cast lots to bring 1 out of 10 to live in Jerusalem, the holy city, while 9 out of 10 remained in the other towns. And the people blessed all the men who willingly offered to live in Jerusalem, because it's going to be, it's a madhouse in the city. And so that's a pretty good idea of how they got in there on that. Huh? Pretty cool.
They basically gambled.
No, they casting lots was not gambling back in the Bible, not when they did it like that. Even though at this time they didn't have the Urim and the Thummim, but basically it was a fair way for people who wanted to do it. I don't think that the people had to pay to put their name in the hat.
Okay.
Who's going to be willing to go there and do it, and and things like that? Because instinctively, by putting the gambling thing on it, it kind of is like we need to. Our benefit of the doubt always would go towards nothing's pushing me off the fact that Jesus Christ and God never did anything wrong. And if they went like, hey, we're going to have a gambling contest or something, that would automatically be out.
Okay.
Let's see. There was one other thing here I wanted to get in about that Tobiah and Sanballat, because they did stop the building of it for a while. Here, verse 7, chapter 7, verse 1. Now when the wall had been built and I had set up the doors and the gatekeepers, the singers and the Levites had been appointed, I gave to my brother Hanani and Hananiah, the governor of the castle, charge over Jerusalem, for he was a more faithful and God-fearing man than many. And I said to them, let not the gates of Jerusalem be open until the sun is hot. And while they are still standing guard, let them shut and bar the doors. Appoint guards from among the inhabitants of Jerusalem
some at their guard post and some in front of their own homes. The city was wide and large, but people within it were few, and no houses had been rebuilt. So that is what, the people were, going like, you casting lots for this. You're going back into, the wall's done. That's paid for by the goldsmiths and those others. And now these people, yeah, I'm coming back in and I'm going to do it. But that's ended up later. We read how they got in debt. They, it was too much. And it was like, next thing you know, their minds weren't all on the Lord. Verse 63, chapter 7. Also the priest, the son of Hobiah, the son of Hakaz, the son of Barzillai, who had taken a wife of the daughters of the Barzillai the Gileonite, who was called by their name. That man took their name. Verse 64. These sought their registration among those enrolled in the genealogies, but it was not found there, so they were excluded from the priesthood as unclean. The governor told them that they were not to partake of the most holy food until a priest with the Urim and the Thummim should arise. These are some of the two most important verses, if not the book of Nehemiah, I mean possibly the Bible. It confirms that the Urim and the Thummim were a real deal, that they were missing, and that they wanted these other people that were trying to stop the building, they wanted to see it. Where is this Urim and Thummim? Because part of the deal that Darius went was, yes, go back and set up your religion the way it was so supposed to be. But there's no other further mention of the Urim and the Thummim in the Bible after this. That's a good, and after 3 hours and 31 minutes, I think that's a good tease to say, hey, who needs more of a reason to go and study those two books and find out, get your own opinions on it and say, what's the Spirit? Heavenly Father, we talked earlier how Jesus is the Lord and the Spirit. We looked at those verses. We've covered a lot of things in all of this time. And now I'm just going to, thank everybody who participated in the chat. Thank Joel, thank Tommy, thank Scotty who dropped by. Appreciate so much. And if you, I would just say, if you don't want to listen to me or me be your teacher, you're still a teacher, that you're commanded to repent and be baptized in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, because there is no other name given to men on heaven or under heaven whereby we must be saved. It's the Lord Jesus Christ. You have to believe that in your heart, confess it with your mouth, believe that you did nothing to earn it, that it is a gift of God. Somebody's going to have to tell you that. You're going to have to believe that if you think you're on the narrow road. And the narrow road is the only thing that leads to salvation, to getting to hear, well done, my good and faithful servant. And it's a flat earth nation. Mudflood was Armageddon. I'm never going to tell you anything else, and neither are my friends. Why would we? We're trying to prove that we have your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Any final words, Joel?
No, I just put in chat. Good night, everyone. Much love. I love you guys.
Yep. Peace and love, everybody. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho.